It's nearly 8 p.m. May 9, 2022, Election Day. Around 22,693 clustered precincts have reportedly closed. COMELEC Commissioner Marlon Casquejo says that as of 7:30 p.m., 20,876 out of 106,174 clustered precincts have transmitted election results. But as of now, the results have yet to be made publicly accessible. This is Rappler's special coverage of the 2022 national elections. We decide, atin ang Pilipinas.
Number 2 sa balota.
Pilipinas! God work!
Big Action!
Mali Bakla!
Good evening, I'm Beko Pin. With me is Rappler's resident economist JC Punong Bayan, head of regions Inday Espina Varona, and veteran journalist Sheila Coronel. We have Ralph Rivas live from Davao City. Ralph?
Na-monitor ko kanina kung gaano kalala yung sitwasyon dyan sa Manila. Napakaraming delays at marami pa rin hindi nakakaboto kahit pa sarado na. Pero dito sa Davao City, sa Daniel R. Aguinaldo National High School, kung saan bumoto si VP aspirant, VP Bet Sara Duterte at ang kanyang ama na si President Rodrigo Duterte, simula na ng pag-transmit. In fact, dito sa classroom na ito ay kakatapos lamang, kani-kanina lamang yung pag-transmit ng 22 election returns both for the national and local. Now, itong presinto na ito has over 700 voters, roughly around the same numbers din yung mga clusters dito sa iba, no? Pero at this point, parang hinihintay na lang yung statistical report and then eventually yung mga poll watchers at saka yung mga, well, basically, the poll watchers will sign the election returns. Sabi sa akin ng mga volunteers dito, no, at ng PPCRV, yung mga na-encounters lang nilang, yung mga na-encounter lang nila na problema are mostly maulan. Maulan kasi kaninang umaga eh. So, if you recall, si Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte ay bumoto ng past 9 in the morning. At 9 a.m. ay halos wala pa rin masyadong tao dito. So, Sara Duterte didn't have to line up actually sa pagkakapansin ko, no? So, kasi wala pang tao eh. Nagdatingan lang yung mga tao past 10 kasi nga maulan. And that's probably one of the reasons why bakit na-delay at humaba yung pila. But in general, it was generally smooth dito. Wala kaming nakitang sumablay ng mga VCM. At it's just mostly people arriving sort of late as compared to the other regions na medyo maaga at 5 a.m. pa lang ay pumipila na. May mga napansin din tayo, no, na maraming deactivated the voters, some of them claiming na bumoto naman sila last elections. So that's something that COMELEC needs to address. Pero so far, ito na nga, nag-transmit na ng boto dito sa particular precinct, sa particular cluster na ito, Bea.
Ralph, you've been there the whole day. Overall, ano yung mood in Davao City? Kasi earlier nga, no, we went to different precincts around Metro Manila. Medyo heightened ang mood. We've seen it also on social media. I'm sure when you scroll your Facebook feeds, sa mga kaibigan natin who are based in NCR, parang ang daming emotional, ang daming nasistress na, kahihintay so they could cast their vote. But there in Davao, what's the mood like?
Alam mo ba, two words for that, no? Based on my experience, can't relate. Napakatahimik talaga ng vibes dito. I'm like, wala yung passionate na parang, oh, this X candidate or Y candidate should win. Parang wala akong naramdaman ganun eh. Parang walang pink wave, blue, red, green, or sort of those colors. It's quite muted here in Davao City based on my brief experience here and observations, no? Probably because the Dutertes are ano ba most likely to win or 'di ba parang may mga kumakalaban naman pero I mean the whole of the Dutertes for over 3 decades really speaks volumes na tipong wala eh parang it's so quiet and if you support a national candidate na hindi ka aliado sa mga Duterte, that's basically kiss of death, di ba? Of your political career. So parang ganun yung vibes eh.
Is the camp also partly because of all the national candidates? It's probably Sara Duterte who's like a sure win for anything. Dahil hindi lang siya bongbong, may rosa pa. So like across the different political alignments, she's being chosen.
Exactly. So yun nga, parang it's so quiet and wala masyadong aberya dito sa Vicens. Again, from where I'm at, dito sa eskwelahang ito, can't relate dyan sa experience dyan sa Manila.
Yeah. So to further contextualize,
I have a question, and it's about, this is basically the House of Duterte, I think, is being challenged for the first time in a really serious way by a civil society candidate with Mags Maglana. Is she making a dent? And is that campaign indicative of a sort of crack in the Duterte monopoly of political power in Davao City?
Well, as far as my interview with Mags Maglana, yung na-interview ko siya just a couple of days ago, she's very optimistic because yung isa sa mga pinunto niya is yes, the father, President Rodrigo Duterte, has all the charms. He has enthralled the city, but the city also perceives the children differently, in particular the male children. So, di ba, parang there's this image of Baste Duterte being the happy-go-lucky surfer guy who has become vice mayor and then now running for mayor of Davao City for the first time. And Baste Duterte, who has been dragged into various controversial issues, naano pa siya sa Senate, and he went against Senator Llanes regarding issues on drugs and other corruption issues. So yung may mga ganong dynamics. And Mags Maglana says na they are now more receptive because hindi naman yung father involved, rather it's the children who have their own images as well. Even Rui Lopez, who's a former three-time congressman who came out of retirement, now challenging Baste Duterte, is saying na there's a crack that there are opportunities for outsiders to take a slice in the Davao politics.
Siyempre, again, the context here is, kumbaga si Sara Duterte was holding the fort in Davao City when Rodrigo Duterte went to national politics. Ngayon naman, Rodrigo Duterte he claims that he will retire from politics, and Sara Duterte is going into national politics na matitira yung dalawang magkapatid. So it's interesting also, maybe in this election or maybe in the succeeding elections, how challenges to the Duterte dynasty will play out. Maraming salamat, Ralph. He's been in Davao, in that school, the whole day halos, monitoring the voting in Davao City. Again, that's Ralph Rivas reporting live from Davao. So earlier we were going through parang the state of like how people are voting around the Philippines, but let's do a quick recap of the situation in NCR in Teachers Village, Quezon City. Initial reports say people are threatening to force their way upstairs if the replacement machines won't arrive by 6:30 p.m. At that point kasi only one VCM was working in that clustered precinct. Officials there recommended that voters leave their filled ballots, and officials in the presence of poll watchers and PPCRV reps would feed the ballots into the functional counting machines. Again, nabanggit ko kanina, di ba? On social media, we see a lot of people reporting this na hindi gumagana yung VCM and people holding on to their ballots kasi ayaw nila i-turn over para yung COMELEC na yung mga teachers na doon or yung assigned na doon ang mag-feed sa mga machines. In Manila, the really long lines only started moving at around 6:30 p.m. as polls were about to close. And in Marikina, one precinct reported VCM malfunctioning, resulting hold on.
In a long lines.
In long lines around the area. Yung dalawang kasama natin ngayon sa panel, bumoto sila today in NCR. How was the experience in Dayan JC?
Yeah, I voted in Colyat Elementary School in Quezon City, and luckily enough, it was smooth sailing. But I think that's largely because I was with my mom, who's a senior citizen, so we got the senior citizen pass. So, but other than that, there was a very long line in front of Colyat Elementary School. Lots of people were really having a difficult time finding their names in front of the different precincts. But other than that, it was a smooth sailing. But I have some friends who also voted in Quezon City who stayed basically from 6 a.m. They were there at 6 a.m. and then they waited up until 7 p.m. and beyond just so they could feed their ballots into the machines. They wouldn't budge. They really wouldn't let go of their ballots. They don't really trust anyone else to feed those ballots. So I think that was the case for many of my friends in Quezon City.
Okay.
The same. Some members of the family had like 30 minutes. Depends on the time. Some came late, but also just spent an hour. Some spent 6 hours. A sister spent 7 hours. I mean,
The whole range.
there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to what happened today.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Pero syempre, again, these are mostly reports from within NCR. As Ralph reported earlier, medyo sobrang iba yung experience, at least in the precinct where Sara Duterte and President Rodrigo Duterte cast their vote earlier. But let's zoom out, no? Syempre, I know a lot of people watching right now who are online, very heightened ang emotions, very emotional ngayon, understandably, because they want to protect their ballot. But maybe let's contextualize this. Like, how would you compare this to previous elections? Siguro the more recent ones, and for our younger viewers, those who may have not yet been born, who may have been born in the 2000s lang, no? Parang let's contextualize the 2022 national election so far.
Well, from my point of view, this election actually is less violent both in the run-up and on election day itself than previous elections. And I suspect that's because the battle has shifted away from, the guns, goons, and golds, no longer guns, so much as money still speaks. Vote buying is still a problem. And I think the battle has also shifted to the information war rather than the bullet war. I don't know whether that's progress or whether we are regressing, but certainly it's a relatively peaceful election compared to elections past, and much more emphasis, I think, on the battle of, at least at the national level, not at the local level, on machine and money and information warfare.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably the first election where information warfare takes, it's become a significant, really, maybe almost as important as the traditional electoral machine.
Parang kumbaga the usual electoral propaganda on steroids and on your phones.
Right, because I think it's the battle for people's attention and their loyalties, and that battle is being fought on the mobile phones. I don't know if that's what you're seeing as well.
Oh, well, I noticed, but one thing I've noticed is the local politicians don't seem to need the national politicians all that much. It used to be that the money came from the top, and then they would, of course, pay back in terms of votes. Right now, I've noticed in several big provinces, voila. Because I've seen something that I hadn't really seen before. Ang daming mga big families who would have otherwise, gone against each other, have coalesced.
Yeah.
Very, very wise. They're spending less. They need the national politicians need them more than they need the national officials because they're practically running unopposed.
Yeah.
Only in the few provinces na malakas pa rin ang dynasty to dynasty like Abra, that's where the killings still continue, or Lanao, mga ganon. But Negros, for example, where we used to joke that hacenderos will never get together, they have. They're hardly opposed there.
So what is the reason for that, Inday? Is it because they are seeing that this is a more cost-effective way of sort of
Doing business.
sharing
Yeah,
political power?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think
But-
it's more efficient for them.
But does that also mean that there is less electoral competition in the sense that it is very difficult to challenge this family coalitions?
That's true.
So if you are a challenger who does not come from a family, doesn't have money or resources in the campaign, that it's even more difficult now to dislodge political clans from power.
That's true, because if there were three big families fighting with each other, you could stand a chance there. But if they've all said, just one, and you've got all three of them arrayed against you, it's very hard to find the confidence to go up against them.
Is this something that just happened in 2022, or were there signs?
There were signs. It first happened in 2019, at least in Negros and in certain parts of Iloilo. But hindi pa ganun kalawak. And then they really consolidated. So ngayon, only a handful ang tinatawag nilang zona libre where they could not convince their friends. These are all friends and families for that matter, na to give way. But otherwise, wala. So wala sila halos. Sila kakampanya, wala lang. Parang masaya sila lahat doon.
We'll continue talking about the 2022 electoral situation, but for now, we have the Commission on Elections holding its 8 p.m. press conference. Let's listen in.
Election Director Temi Lambino for the National Capital Region. Attorney Lambino, sir.
Good evening, friends. We have the honor of having here Regional Election Director for National Capital Region, Attorney Temi P. Lambino, to brief us on the election situations in the National Capital Region. Sir?
Thank you, Director Rex. Irene, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to state the security or the peace and order situation of the National Capital Region based on the report sent to me by the PNP Regional Director Major General Philippine Natividad as of 6:12 p.m. He said that, in summation, situation of the NCR PO area of responsibility is generally peaceful as of this report. Continuous monitoring is being undertaken for information, sir. So there's no reported untoward incident to our office. Well, except for some problem on queuing and falling in line with by our voters. That I think those were the reports that we answered or we addressed as early as 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, I think the very question here is with regard to the queuing in Perfecto High School in Tondo, Manila. This actually was brought about by few circumstances. The first one is the Gregorio Perfecto High School, which can be found in Rica Fort State, Tondo, Manila, has already 8,024 registered voters with the clustered precincts of 12. That is the original clustered precincts of that school or voting center. Now, Now, because of the Almario Elementary School, which now under repair by the city government of Manila, that Gregorio Perfecto High School accommodated 3 barangays of that Almario Elementary School voting center. Barangay 18, Barangay 19, and the biggest one is Barangay 20 of Tondo, Manila, which have a total number of registered voters of 24,942 with clustered precincts of 34. So imagine the number of registered voters from supposed to be Almario Elementary School voting center going to Gregorio Perfecto High School, which has already had or has 8,024, then there would be a kind of issue with regard to the queuing or falling in line of the voters, which of course we just resolved by adding security from the Philippine National Police and making some arrangement. Apart from that, the reason why we have this issue is because of our security protocol also. We only accommodate 10 voters inside the voting places, and of course that would result to a long line waiting for the voters to have their turn to vote. So that is the situation with regard to the Gregorio Perfecto High School in Rica 4th Street, Tondo, Manila. Now, for the VCMs, we received 165 BCMs that would be repaired or that were repaired or replaced. As of 30 minutes ago, we only had 2 VCMs under repair. We also had 142 SD cards that didn't work. 133 of them were already replaced by our hub in Santa Rosa. So those things added to our issues here. A lot of people that is only equivalent to 2-point-something% of the total number of VCMs that we have here in the National Capital Region, which is 10,358. A very minimal fraction of the total number of VCMs that we use as at the opening of the polls at 6 o'clock in the morning a while ago. So I think that is the report when it comes to our VCMs, our SD cards, the securities, and the issues in Tondo, as well as the peace and order situation of the National Capital Region. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lambino, sir. For the entire country, Director Rex Laujanco, sir.
Thank you, Sir Erwin. May I just add po dun sa na-explain ni Director Lambino. Sir, napag-usapan po namin kanina yung rationale why we could not move further the voters from Rosario, Almario to another place to decongest. Yun lang po kasing distance from Rosario, Almario to Gregorio Perfecto High School ay 1 kilometer na po. We could not move to another polling place yung voters po natin na mas malayo kasi mas malaki po yung tsansa na hindi sila bumoto at ultimately ma-disenfranchise po sila. Dapat po kasi yung polling place na binibigay natin sa mga as close as possible sa mga barangay. That's the first consideration. Kaya po napilitan ang COMELEC na pahintulutan ang paglipat ng mga botante from Rosario, Almario sa pinakamalapit na paaralan pa yung Perfecto High School. Okay po, I hope that clears up, kasama po ng explanation. And right now po, Director Lambino had explained the full force of COMELEC Manila are there together with the Philippine National Police and the DepEd to manage the queue. Moving naman po sila lahat. Okay. Now for the other parts, For the OFOV, we already have received 33.55%, a significant number compared to the other elections. Isa pa pong sigurong maituturing ko na good news sa mga nag-aabang po dun sa deliverables, those who are waiting for COMELEC deliverables. The election website results is now up and running. It's 2022 election, one word, 2022 election results.comelec.gov.ph, and that website is open to the public. And as of 7:49 p.m., out of the 106,174 election returns expected to be transmitted, received are already 32,068 election returns. Dahil 7:49 p.m. pa to at 8:30 na po ngayon, I expect a significant increase in the number of election returns that we have received. For the overseas election returns, we are expecting to receive 1,406 overseas election returns. We now have received 5 of these. Of course, we don't expect to receive yet national COCs dahil magkakanvas pa lang po ang National Board of Canvassers. We don't expect yet at this time to receive, of course, yung provincial COCs. Dahil po nga po, as I've explained before, ladderized canvassing is required under law. Those that will be canvassed by the provincial boards of canvassers are the certificates of canvass of municipal boards of canvassers and those component cities constituting city boards of canvassers in that province. So wala pa rin po talagang ina-expect na ma-receive. Insofar as the city COCs are concerned, certificates of canvass, we're expecting 1,633, and as of 7:49, wala pa rin po tayong natatanggap. So what's good about this is that the transparency commitment of the COMELEC insofar as the results are concerned is already up and running. It's the COMELEC election website, for results website. Now for the, just a quick update for the VCMs that malfunctioned, as we have explained before, all the 106,174 clustered precincts equivalent to the VCMs had completed their FTS, 100% had functioned. What about those who were which were subjected to repair? A total of 0.502%, all of which were repaired and then delivered back to serve as contingency machines. Insofar as the SD cards are concerned, that amounts to a percentage of 0.203%. And dun po sa SD cards that I have mentioned, 99.54% of that were reconfigured and then sent back to the electoral boards to make the VCMs function. Insofar as the other reports are concerned, perhaps we give them time for these results to come in. We will have our regular briefing tomorrow at 12 noon, midday. So before the resumption of the proceedings of the National Board of Canvassers, we will have our midday briefing here po. Okay.
Thank you, sir. For Q&A, the first to ask question is Miss Mela Lesmoras, PTV4. At the back po, sa likod po yung microphone, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, sirs. I'm Mela from PTV4. For Sir Attorney Laujanco, sir, supposed to be hanggang 7 p.m. po kasi yung botohan natin. As of now, ano po yung report sa inyo on ground sa buong Pilipinas? Kasi may mga nagre-report na hanggang ngayon, nakapila pa rin sila. Ito po ba ay ongoing? Ano po yung hanggang anong oras po yung nakikita ng COMELEC na botohan sa bansa?
Most of the precincts that I have mentioned po have already closed their votings. Karamihan po yan na ina-expect namin yung nagkaroon ng konting delay or those which are highly populated cities and municipalities. Nonetheless, ang ini-stress, what we emphasize here is that no matter how long it takes, for as long as those voters came into the queue before 7 p.m. until 7 p.m., we will ensure that they will be able to cast their votes. Commitment po ng COMELEC yan. It's our commitment to the people that we will ensure that they will not be disenfranchised. Kahit anong oras po abutin, papabotohin po namin sila.
Opo. And a follow-up lang, sir, kasi isa sa mga nakikitang dahilan kaya nagtagal din sa pila yung iba nating mga kababayan ay dahil nga po dun sa nagkaproblemang mga VCMs para lang din ma-assure yung public na hindi po ito makakaapekto sa resulta ng halal. Ano po yung mga assurance nyo sa ating mga kababayan?
The VCMs that malfunctioned po, as you could see, and we have been stressing it for the whole day, was that it was immediate. The first mode po kasi is to repair it on site. We escalated to the next level wherein supervisors from the National Tech Support Center are guiding the technician. At the last resort, if the VCM could not be repaired, that is only the time we pull it out and immediately replace it with a contingent VCM. So that is to ensure, at nakita naman po natin 100% turnout. In fact nga po, yung na-delay ng konti kanina sa Davao Occidental dahil tumaas po yung ilog, binaha po sila. They were able to proceed with the voting at 8:30 a.m. Yun po yung kaisa-isa kaninang nakapag-FTS but na-delay sa opening because ang taas po ng ilog, hindi sila makatawid. But still, they were able to forge on. Nag-start po lahat. Isa pa pong nakita namin ng konting reason kung bakit marami pa pong tao sa mga polling centers ngayon. Ito po yung, tama kayo, nagkaroon ng konting problema sa VCM at gusto po nilang ma-experience na i-feed yung ballots by themselves. Iginagalang po namin ito. Okay? Ang nangyari po kasi, they stayed at their polling places.
On the
They're
2022
waiting.
election day. Quick summary lang siguro. According to the elections in NCR was generally peaceful, although we did note na medyo emotions were running high in certain precincts in Metro Manila because of delays in voting, mga VCMs na hindi gumagana. Pero according to police, generally peaceful naman daw yung NCR. Na-resolve na rin daw yung issue sa isang precinct in Tondo, Manila. So let's take a quick look at the election returns received according to the COMELEC. 48.89% of local election returns have been received. 1.13% pala ng overseas election returns have been received. We will be calling in Jairo Dwight De Leon later. He's our COMELEC reporter for more updates from the press conference. Okay, let's go back to our discussion earlier. No, yung you mentioned, di ba, parang kumbaga yung nangyayari ngayon. Kung dati dynasty versus dynasty nangyayari in the provinces, imbes na party versus party, which is the ideal world. You have strong parties running against each other. Parang yung nangyayari ngayon, dynasty with dynasty, in effect, leaving voters with even lesser choices or no choice at all. What does this say about what direction we're going in terms of democracy in the Philippines?
Well, without the context of I think to answer that question, we need to factor in the very different national presidential campaigns that we're seeing, and especially the response of the people. If it were any other election, at ang mga big families ay nag-coalesce ng ganyan, parang feeling mo wala ka talagang chance. But as I think Miriam, Grace, and I have been talking about, the fact that citizens have been flexing their muscle in organizing, in fundraising, in doing 1,000,001 logistical things that they would have otherwise let the politicians do and the professionals do for the longest time. I think that bodes well for the cracks that that Ralph was talking about. No, nandyan na yan kasi it takes success to actually encourage people, and even if the final success doesn't really come, the fact that people have realized that they can do it without that much help from politicians, I think may make them look at their own communities and wonder if we could do this on that scale, we can probably do it within our towns and cities. So my hope nga dyan.
But I also think that we're seeing over time less and less competitive elections. That elections have mostly been battles between clans. And as the Ateneo study on political clans show, over time, the percentage of local government posts and legislative positions that go to clans have increased.
Yes.
Right? And I don't know what this election is going to bring, but I would think that depending on the results, it could either be, are you saying that we are stopping the trend because we're seeing more citizen participation?
I think so because iba yung nakikita ng citizens na kaya pala. I mean, like in several cities, people are moaning like our choice is A and B, and we have nothing else. But right now, they're realizing that nobody's going to do it for them. They've got to do it for themselves, and maybe not immediately, Sheila. Definitely, not within 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, but it'll start, I think.
Didn't we already see this? You had reformist candidates at the local level. For example, Jesse Robredo battling the clans, and then becoming. This was the 1990s when it was still possible. Do you think, compared to the 1990s, this is more of a, there's more of an opening now for democratizing our politics?
If the 6 years of Duterte hasn't taught us a lesson about the need to do things for ourselves, I don't know what else, can convince Filipinos than talaga. I think really Filipinos should realize that, and I think they are realizing that they cannot leave this country to the so-called betters, because they are the reason we are where we are now, although partly we are the reason why we are where we are now too, so, pero naririnig mo nakikita mo when they talk about the power that they feel, nung nag-aambagan, the thing with this Robredo thing isn't just na marami sila papunta sa rallies or anything. It's the fact that in a lot of cities, the politicians actually stepped aside. The organizing of the big events were actually by citizen volunteers.
Right. Yeah.
So nakikita na may pagkilala, na may puwang, may lugar, na pwedeng mapasukan yung mga tao.
Pero ano nga doon, parang maganda siyang at heartwarming message yung kung walang i-endorso sa kanila na local politicians, ang simpleng tao ang i-endorso sa kanya. But I think beyond that being, a heartwarming moment, parang siguro yun yung challenge for the volunteers that are
can they sustain this moment?
Diba?
The energies that have been released during this election.
Yeah.
Can it be sustained towards electoral reform or democratic reforms? Right?
Tataya ba sila?
That'll be harder.
Tumaya yung mga tao, not just energy, pati pera. A lot of people were actually, cutting into the, yun ang tanong dyan. Will they be fired up? Will they be disappointed after this?
Yeah.
That's going to factor in.
Yeah. Although you do have a lot of voices now pa lang, di ba? Parang even I think the meeting the avance of the Robredo and Pangilinan campaign, di ba? More than, kumbaga, hyping up their own candidacies, it was really a recognition of how different the campaign turned out to be. I'm not sure if in October 2021 they saw it going that direction, no? Did they expect kaya na magkakaroon ng, kumbaga, volunteers pa rin bibit-bit sa kanila in a lot of key cities and provinces around the country, right?
I think no, because at the start, it felt like ang layo eh. Parang politicians at ang tao, di ba? Parang may ganun pang very big divide pa eh. But somewhere along the way, things change talaga. I don't know.
I've been through, I've attended actually 3 of those Robredo rallies. And talagang madadama mo yung energy ng crowd eh, in the sense that parang for example, dun sa mga areas, dun sa mga rallies na parang hindi ganun ka-dense, na malayo sa stage or malayo sa, parang they make up their own program dun sa local area na yun eh, na parang they take it upon themselves to do something, to engage, even if and parang they take direction from Robredo herself, and parang it's quite inspiring, it's amazing, and I can imagine those huge rallies across the different regions, they can be quite intimidating. So local leaders parang they have no choice but to somehow give way, nga as you mentioned, na parang it's different to counter that. So parang yeah, they're facing that kind of reality, and yeah.
Well, in a way, you know, the Robredo campaign didn't have a choice because they didn't have the powerful political family supporting them. They didn't have no real political parties endorsing them. They ran mostly as independents. So their only choice was to mobilize volunteers, which was a gamble.
Yeah.
They probably didn't expect, I think not in their wildest dreams did they expect that there would be such level of volunteerism. But maybe they are tapping into something that has, you know, we aren't seeing or we didn't see. But what is that something?
I think it's a snowballing of all the emotions in the past 6 years. Na parang that have swelled up, and somehow people really needed to engage. And it's not really cheap to engage in those rallies, or it can be quite expensive actually. You print those posters and then those T-shirts, stickers, all manner of I mean, the materials for the campaign. So parang, yeah.
But weren't people saying that with the pandemic that people would be so, you know, so consumed by survival that they would not have time for politics, and that
I think baliktad tuloy.
Yeah,
Baka that's also an effect na parang it's been 2 years of staying at home,
Trying to
living
stay
in
alive.
fear,
Yeah.
literally, di ba? And for the thousands of Filipinos who lost their jobs, or kahit may trabaho man sila, medyo nagdelikado yung economic situation nila, no? Parang siguro also the like seeing people physically go out, attend rallies, may mga house to house, may gumagalaw, may tumitindig, kumbaga, in the words of the Robredo campaign tonight. Siguro it stirred something din in a lot of people who essentially lost hope in the past 2 years under the pandemic.
Yeah. I think that's connected as well to what happened to the economy. So ito yung tinatawag na revenge spending, that after 2 years of staying at home, not spending so much, ito yung opportunity, ito yung outlet nila to spend and to travel somehow. Many of those Robredo supporters, they actually fly to those rallies. They come from Manila, go to so many
electoral
places.
tourism.
Electoral
feel
tourism,
altruistic.
yeah, that's the term right there. So yeah, it's related to what happened to the economy.
So
But
imbis
there's
gumasta ka.
something that's also, usually pag sinabi natin volunteers dati, that would mean just somebody saying that I want to help. And yet, utusan ka pa rin. Because that's the old volunteer model, di ba? This one, no. Parallel organization sila, hindi sila mautusan. Kasi nga, they weren't dependent. Right from the start, they were never dependent on the political side ng Robredo campaign.
Right.
So, sila, parallel yung nila.
Yeah, and it's not your traditional groups that have organized for elections, right?
Yeah.
It's like what you see in the rallies, the vegans for Lenny, the bakers for Lenny. But it's
Everybody
cross-cutting, both geographically, sectorally, and generationally, right?
Yeah. But of course, siguro, at the risk of romanticizing the Robredo campaign, like you pointed out, this it wasn't so much na parang na-inspire lang, but it was also a need. Because as opinion polls were showing, Bongbong Marcos was dominating the opinion polling, di ba? Kumbaga, at one point, di ba? Actually, the last opinion poll indicated a possible majority preference for the late dictator's son. So, baka that could also have fueled the intensity of involvement of volunteers, the urgency na hindi lang sa naghahabol tayo pero napakalayo ng kailangan habulin, at napakadehado ng situation, kumbaga, ng kalagayan ng pambato natin.
And that's a good question kasi you hear a lot of angst na parang ang dami-dami natin nag-attend sa rally. Why are there surveys like that?
Yeah.
You know, and it's something like, and people keep on asking that, and it's very hard to tell them na don't believe the surveys because the surveys have generally been rather accurate in this country. So parang you don't know what to tell people because meron ganyang disbelief and an angry disbelief actually, like after everything we've done, bakit ganyan pa rin? But I think maybe you have better sense of why it's that.
I'm not sure I have a better sense of what's happening more than you. And I think it's up in the air. As you said, the surveys are quite accurate. They have predicted almost all the previous electoral results. But as I have been mentioning, the landscape is also changing in the sense that internet penetration in the country has increased since 2016. And somehow there's a case to be made that those Google Trends and other internet-based predictive models can be more predictive of our electoral outcomes. But of course, you cannot really compare what's happening, for example, in France to what's happening in the Philippines. We're not that developed. We're not that engaged in the internet connection as well. There are limits to the comparisons that can be made.
But of course, to add, although we did mention possible cracks in the power of, or a chance at chipping away at the power, the chokehold of dynasties in the province, the Senate, we might see 4 sets of family members in the Senate, in the upcoming Senate. How do we make sense of that naman na parang we see a rise in voluntarism. People have even compared it to 1986. But at the same time, nakikita natin consolidation of dynasties in the local level and dynasties filling the Senate. Kung there's a chance na 8 out of 24 members ay magkakamag-anak, mag-ama, mag-ina, magkakapatid.
I think naman may push and pull lagi yan from the bottom, let's say, and usually the smaller victories first come from the bottom and then they sort of consolidate. But while that's happening, yung mga malalaki nag-consolidate na last stop yan I mean, baka nakikita mo na like in 5-10 years these guys are going, so like they're also consolidating on top. So hindi matatapos ang umpugan yan, I think. And I think my polarity lalo, whoever wins, I think in the next 6 years, magkakaroon lalo ng banggaan in both the upper regions.
Actually, it used to be the Senate was, in the beginning, was not where political clans were strong. They were strong in the House of Representatives because those are district-based. But I think the consolidation of families and their dominance in the Senate is part of this growing concentration of power at the local level. And with families holding multiple positions at the local level, they're able to leverage that to national office, which is what the Marcoses did and what the Ejercitos did. It used to be the Senate was you can get elected if you're nationally known, you're a movie star or a TV anchor. But now the families have really managed to claw their way into that because they've been in power for so long. And so they have national networks and national prominence and awareness, voter awareness.
And this is probably where the dynamics of during elections, di ba, parang yung local, national na dynamics, na who needs who more. But in a way, like you mentioned, the dynasties, by helping out their national candidates, also build up their name. I think the Dutertes, for example, di ba? Parang si Rodrigo Duterte, as much as he has demonized the Dilawans, he was once head of the Liberal Party in Davao. Because eventually, di ba, parang building that power, and he became, he won the 2016 presidential elections.
Yes.
Naging malungkot ba bigla yung discussions. But it's an interesting contrast na parang yun nga, we see people, this has been a dream, I think, of a lot of reformists, di ba? To see a genuine volunteer-driven campaign. But then at the same time, you see further consolidation of political power among the dynasty.
Well, the Senate was supposed to be a check on local power.
Yeah.
Because senators are elected nationally, but that's no longer the case because you have the Senate now being largely filled by people who have local power and national power.
In the case of Duterte, it's interesting to me that, for example, how easy it was for Duterte to pull in, for example, Bongo or Bato de la Rosa, who were not family members but closely associated with Duterte, friends, basically, longtime allies, and then so easily put them in such high positions.
Yeah.
That's something that was quite alarming in a way back in 2019.
I would call them family surrogates. They're
Family
basically
surrogates.
part of the
Family.
same family,
Yeah.
except that they're not related by blood, but they
Yeah.
have very strong loyalties and affinities.
And I mean,
That's because they don't have a big enough family to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kasi you only have 3 adult
Right,
children.
exactly.
they're
Yeah.
actually they're actually a little bit unique because in many families you see them fragmenting
Yeah.
because there are just too many. They just keep on, growing bigger and bigger, and there's only so many positions available, and so they fragment and they end up sometimes killing each other. The Dutertes need people,
Yeah.
and in the case of Bongo, it was very, very clear that he was special to Duterte. Whatever that the cause of that, nobody could dispute that. So that it was
Almost family.
almost family.
Actually, parang when I was doing research on Davao City, a lot of people from Davao were telling me na parang you have to don't think of Bongo as just the aide. Like you have to think of him, parang anak na lang din
The
yan.
son he never had.
Parang gano'n, parang anak na rin yan. Na parang, so if you're talking about political succession or in terms of like entrusting political power, Bongo is absolutely in that equation. And talking about Ronald de la Rosa, siya, diba? Siyempre siya yung loyal soldier who asked no questions. When he was asked to file his candidacy as president, his only question was, baka hindi ako umabot kasi traffic papuntang Sofitel. Yun lang talaga yung tanong niya. When he was told by PDP Laban, implicitly by Duterte through PDP Laban na go ahead and file your candidacy as president, he didn't question it. He was like, okay, kaso traffic. What am I gonna do if I'm gonna be stuck in traffic? Let's zoom in naman and zoom in and zoom out, no? Kasi parang we talked a lot about NCR, about your own experiences in voting. How would you assess the violence? Unfortunately, parang recurring issue siya in the Philippines na during every election. How would you compare the violence that at least the reported violence that's happening in the 2022 elections to previous ones?
Ang laki ng difference. Actually, we've improved a lot.
In that sense,
Yeah, in that sense.
But usually violence is at the local level. The only time I remember there was violence in a national election was 1986,
Yeah.
when the Marcoses pulled out all the stops in ensuring a Marcos victory, and where there was a very strong grassroots movement for Cory Aquino, and a strong movement also to protect the vote, and that is where you had the goons beating up poll watchers. That's when you had nuns and priests chaining themselves to ballot boxes. I was actually there. I was going around Manila, and I saw all of these people really marching with because this was before computerized elections. So they were bringing the ballot boxes from the precincts to the canvassing centers in the municipal halls. So it was like a procession because you had the nuns and the priests in front, the people at the back, and they were holding torches because it was night, and they would be marching to the municipal hall. And that's a national election. That's the only time. And then there was, all sorts of threats, intimidation. A lot of it caught on camera, and that's why there was such cloud of doubt over the conduct of that poll, and that was why there was an uprising. Maybe people don't remember this, but EDSA was really an uprising against a perceived fraudulent election.
But I think these days the violence comes in the form of attacks on social media platforms,
Yeah.
in the form, for example, harassment of or even death threats in some instances. Not just directed toward candidates, but also supporters of those candidates. And it can be vicious. It's very easy for people who are otherwise not political to actually go into their laptops and engage. I have a number of friends who are quite quiet when it comes to politics, but in this particular cycle, they're basically keyboard warriors, fighting trolls, commenting on random pages. So yeah, that's the rules of engagement these days, I think.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, the past 90 days felt like more than 90 days in terms of emotional investment, financial investment for some volunteers. Again, syempre yung backdrop doon, napakalakas ni Bongbong Marcos Jr. according to opinion polling. In the scenario that Leni Robredo loses, and consistent with the opinion polling, how do you see the volunteer movement going? Of course, yung isa pang layer doon, kumbaga, nabanggit mo nga, di ba, dati physical violence. Now we're seeing basically violence versus the truth through these vast disinformation networks, a lot of them associated with the Marcos camp.
It'll partly depend on where we're coming from the premise now that Marcos is going to win, right? It's theoretical. And I think she said something. She said, anuman ang mangyari sa eleksyon na to, itutuloy natin ang laban. So that sounds like she's not going anywhere. For a woman who used to say, I just wanted to retire, I want to retire, now to hear her say, anuman mangyari, tuloy ang laban. And she's young. She's young. So
Fighting words.
yeah, those are fighting words. So it'll really depend, no? Pag nakita nilang iniwanan sila ni Lenny, then I think everybody will, deflate. But if she stays there, I think
I don't know about those young people, especially the first-time voters for whom, it's not always that the first time you vote, it's this emotional kind of election. Either they will be very, very disappointed or they will be motivated to do something beyond. But I don't know, it's hard to say.
I think the fact that people seem to have found each other, realize that there are actually so many like-minded people when it comes to politics. I think that can create some momentum towards some more sustainable movement moving forward. But yeah, it remains to be seen how far they can take that.
And also it depends. People who may like Lenny may have very, very different choices in local politicians. So, may factor in din yan because that's nearer. Kumbaga, mas malapit yan sa kusina, mas malapit sa atay mo yan. No? So, mas visceral yung mga effects ng the changes of politicians on the ground. So, that could also be a difference there. But oh wait, here.
We have transmissions coming in from the Mirror server. So far, it's 8. These are the transmissions as of 8:37 p.m. Bongbong Marcos over 15.3 million votes. Leni Robredo trailing a far second with 7.2 million votes. Manny Pacquiao 1.2 million votes. Mayor Isko Moreno with a little over 1 million votes. Senator Ping Lacson with over 500,000 votes. Faisal Maundato, over 57,900 votes. Ernie Abella with over 44,000 votes. Leody de Guzman with over 41,000 votes. Norberto Gonzales with over 37,000 votes. And Montemayor with over 26,000 votes. Over at the vice presidential race, we have Sara Duterte with over 14.9 million votes. Kiko Pangilinan at a distant second with 4.6 million votes. Vicente Soto with 4.1 million votes. We have Willie Ong with a little over 1 million votes. Lito Atienza with over 106,000 votes. Manny Lopez with over 58,000 votes. Walden Bello with over 41,500 votes, Carlos Serapio with over 34,000 votes, and Rizalito David with over 21,200 votes. This is as of 8:37 p.m. with 46.93 precincts transmitted out of, so ito yung 50,582 precincts have transmitted out of 107,785. So far, this yung snapshot na ito represents over 26.5 voters who came out to vote against over 67.4 million registered voters in the 2022 national elections. Yung trend so far, although we are at 50% almost
Not quite, yeah, not quite. Depends on where
It's coming
this-
from.
Yun din yung thing, we don't know exactly where or at least the what we're seeing now, we don't know where the transmissions are coming from. But this represents over 46.93% of precincts having transmitted their results as of 8:37 p.m. The trend so far is indicating na
It looks like a Marcos.
almost 2 to 1.
or it's consistent with the
I think so. It's
opinion polls.
consistent
With the surveys.
Yeah. I think parang when Mara Cepeda was reporting earlier, no, yun nga parang the Robredo campaign, again, the tone of the meeting, the avance was very much a thank you. And in fact, di ba, Inday, parang umikot sila sa iba't ibang probinsya to say thank you to the volunteers who have been honestly carrying the burden of this campaign on their backs. But whereas the Uni Team Alliance, for them it was basically a victory party.
Victory party.
Yeah.
Already. Joining us live now is Dwight De Leon from the PICC. Dwight?
Yes, Bea, kanina nag-conduct ng press conference ang Commission on Elections their last for the day, and this was after yun ngang mga presinto ay nagsimula ng mag-transmit ng kanilang election returns. So first, let's talk about the closing of the polls. The COMELEC was firm not to extend voting out. They said that voting has generally been peaceful and no report of untoward incident except for some problems in queuing. Of course, we have been receiving reports on the ground, and yung sinasabi ng COMELEC medyo iba sa nararanasan ng mga tao on the ground. That said, the COMELEC has acknowledged that kung mayroon mang mga voters na nakapila pa rin sa mga polling precincts, as long as they made it to the 7 p.m. cutoff, they would have to be entertained. They would have to be accommodated as to not disenfranchise them. So buong araw, nagmo-monitor din ang COMELEC about the machines, VCMs or vote counting machines that were found to be defective. They recorded 533 as of late nationwide, 533 VCMs that were found defective, and 216 SD cards that were found defective. If you will compute it, it's just 0.5% ng total number of machines that showed defects and had to be replaced. And even COMELEC spokesman Rex Lodianco said that it is agrees that it is negligible, but they don't take that 0.5% lightly, and that should really be the case because a small number, a small percentage of a big number is still a huge number, and it affects thousands of voters. And nakita naman natin yun ngayong araw because we've been watching, reading, receiving multiple reports of voters na talagang nahirapang bumoto ngayong araw. Aside from that, yun na nga, sinabi na rin ng Commission on Elections kanina na nagsimula ng mag-transmit ng election returns. As of ang huling tingin ko sa COMELEC website, it's 59.29% of precincts na nakapag-transmit na ng kanilang election returns. So, itong mga election returns na to will be transmitted to the local board of canvassers, tapos yung mapoproduce na certificates of canvass dadalhin sa National Board of Canvassers eventually, at for senators and the party list groups, ang COMELEC ang magko-convene as the National Board of Canvassers and will canvass the votes, samantalang ang for President and Vice President naman will go to Congress.
Dwight, baka na-miss kasi namin kanina kasi bumitaw na kami ng Q&A. Do they has COMELEC discussed yung situation naman in Mindanao? We had reports earlier, no, of violence and unfortunate incidents.
Yes, they discussed it and they're monitoring it. But kanina nung 6 p.m. press con, we were discussing kasi parang is it possible na magkakaroon ng failure of elections in these areas. Sabi ni Chairman Saidamen Pangarungan, as much as possible, ayaw nilang mag-declare ng failure of elections in towns, maybe siguro voting centers. And at the same time, the COMELEC Unbank will be the one to approve if such a recommendation would be made.
Salamat, Dwight. He's reporting live from PICC on the earlier COMELEC press conference. Let's go on screen. Let's check the partial results based on yung transmissions. Again, Bongbong Marcos leading by a wide margin, 17.5 million votes. That represents over 59.8% of yung mga na-transmit as of tonight. Leni Robredo trailing a distant second with 8.3 million votes, representing 28.33% of yung mga na-transmit pa lang sa vice presidential race. Sara Duterte with over 17.1 million votes. That's 59.71% of transmitted votes so far. And distant second again, Senator Kiko Pangilinan with 5.2 million votes, representing 18.36% of the votes that have been transmitted so far. You can check out the graphic that's flashing on screen for the details of the other candidates. So far, mukhang dikit nga siya. I mean, it reflects the latest opinion polling, no?
Yeah, but again, there's a geographic component to this. If you will remember back in 2016, there was a huge debate among data analysts because there were some analysts from the Marcos camp who were contesting that, they were contesting Robredo's win. And they were saying that initially there was a boost of votes coming in from regions like Ilocos, and then later on, it's only later on that the votes from Bicol came in. So there was that kind of lag of votes for Robredo that came in many hours later. So they were saying that there might be something there. But so yeah, in all likelihood, that's the same here.
Yeah.
But let's see. We have to look at the data.
On the other hand, in 2016, the surveys were, as it neared the election, the surveys really became closer.
Yeah.
You know, not like
Nakita mo yung
this
trend,
one,
no? Na padikit ng padikit din
ng
siya.
padikit. It doesn't look the same
Yeah.
in these elections. So,
Siguro, I know that this is far from the
Yeah.
complete na ano, no?
that's partial unofficial.
Partial unofficial
Okay.
pa naman ito. Pero siguro it would be fruitful din to talk about bakit nga ba ang lakas ni Bongbong Marcos Jr. at ni Sara Duterte in the polling. One thing na lumitaw among the experts and even people close to the Duterte camp or people who have been observing the Duterte camp, bukod sa obviously, the Marcos rehabilitation project, the rehabilitation of the Marcos name, you have the magic of not even Sara Duterte necessarily right away, but President Rodrigo Duterte, who of course, the outgoing president who is enjoying record high numbers for a president sa last year of his term. Parang kumbaga yung explanation ng mga analysts at experts ay dito naman tayo sa consolidation of power ng political family. So kumbaga, in the national level, na-consolidate yung power ng hindi lang ng Marcos, pero ng mga Duterte for president and vice president.
Chilean, like him or hate him, President Duterte arouses very strong emotions
Yeah.
and loyalty.
Yeah.
with him.
Hold on, we have the senatorial and the party list results. Sorry. Again, partial unofficial ito. Leading the senatorial race in the 2022 national elections is Robin Padilla. He is the action star and a very staunch defender and supporter of President Rodrigo Duterte. He ran under PDP Laban. May time pa nga, medyo hindi sure kung nasa slate pa siya ng Unity or hindi. But anyway, as of right now, he has 12.491 million votes from the votes that have been transmitted so far. Second is returning Senator former Senator Lord Ricardo, who is eyeing a Senate comeback with over 12.2 million votes. Rafi Tulfo, the TV personality, with 11.7 million votes. Senate re-electionist Win Gatchalian with 10.51 million votes, followed by another returnee in the Senate, incumbent Sorsogon Governor Cheese Escudero with 10.4 million votes, followed by Mark Villar, the former DPWH chief of President Rodrigo Duterte, with 9.7 million votes. Alan Peter Cayetano, current representative ng Taguig, seeking a return in the Senate with 9.5 million votes. He was also the former House Speaker. Joel Villanueva, another re-electionist, 9.5 million votes. Mig Zubiri, re-electionist din, 9.1 million votes. Risa Hontiveros with over 8 million votes. JV, the two brothers, occupying the 11th and 12th slots so far. JV Estrada Ejercito with 7.9 million votes so far. Jinggoy Estrada with over 7.2 million votes so far. Herbert Bautista with over 6.6 million votes so far. Former Vice President Jejo Marbinay with over 6.5 million votes so far. Former Defense Secretary Gibo Chodoro with over 6.4 million votes so far. Followed by former PNP Chief Guillermo Eleazar with over 6 million votes. Chel Jokno at 17th with 5.59 million votes. Former presidential spokesperson and former human rights lawyer Harry Roque with over 5.5 million votes. Gregorio Honasan with over 5.4 million votes. And Larry Gadon at 20 with over 5 million votes. Let's just go through the let's go through the top na party list groups so far. ACT CIS with over 1.1 million votes. One Rider Party List with over 610 million votes. Medyo ang laki ng agwat, no, between number 1 and number 2. We have Sagip with 424,000 votes. Ako Bicol with 391,000 votes. Tingog Party List with 382,000 votes. Tingog yung party list currently represented by Yeda Romualdez, the wife of the incumbent majority speaker, who is of course allied with the Uni Team. Tutok to Win with 372,000 votes. Agimat with over 355,000 votes. 4Ps with over 345,000 votes. Sibak with over 337,000 votes. Senior Citizens Party List, 327,000 votes. Uswag Ilonggo with 326,000 votes. Ang Probinsyano with 324,000 votes. Hindi po ito yung TV show. Ito ay isang party list group. Kabataan with 323,000 votes. Duterte Youth with 296,000 votes. Probinsyano ako with over 274,000 votes. LPGMA with over 261,000 votes. Gabriela Party List with over 250,000 votes. APE or API with 248,500 votes. AGAP with over 246,500 votes. And finally, P3PWD with over 231,300 votes. Again, ito ay partial at unofficial results based on the transmissions. Bakit natin sinasabing part of unofficial? Kasi yung official ay sa canvassers na lamang. So ito yung, kasi nga real time yung transmission ng votes dahil automated na yung voting natin. That's the results so far.
It's pretty fast, huh?
Pretty fast, yeah.
Already, or almost 60%.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Walang naka-indicate, but it's up on top. a little over 50% of
50%,
transmissions, precincts reporting as of 9:01 p.m. This is based on real-time. These are unofficial and partial results based on real-time data from the COMELEC transparency server. Actually, now that I'm looking at it now, beyond the Senate, so we talked about consolidation of power in the Senate, in the local races, even the party list, like a lot of those
A lot of
party
those.
list groups are actually
Political dynasties.
yung nominees nila ay part din ng political
Yes.
dynasties. How did we reach this level wherein down to the party list groups ay tila dynasties, or at least kung hindi man lang member ng dynasty ay kumbaga backed by a dynasty yung iba mga groups na ito?
Ano hindi naman bago yan. I mean, the powers that be will always try to co-opt every avenue in
Yeah.
politics, because that's the way they are, you want to control things. I think that the Supreme Court decision that
Yeah.
actually allowed them to I'm sorry, but to make a mockery
Yeah.
of party list system was very, very unfortunate, and that's why we're looking at that list
Yeah.
of people who have nothing to do with the sector that they purport to
Yeah.
claim.
Yeah. I think si former Akbayan Representative Tom Billirin pointed out in 2019, again, yun yung year na devastating loss for Akbayan, first time that they didn't win a seat in the House, no, na parang because of that Supreme Court decision, no, kumbaga yung party list system dominated na siya by dynasties, and kung hindi dynasty na dadaan sa pera, to amass enough votes to secure a seat in the House of Representatives.
So instead of the sectors and instead of the marginal groups, learning the ropes of Congress to assert their interests, sinabi actually basically ng Supreme Court na pwedeng isang mataas na tao ang maging padrino ninyo sa Kongreso through the party list.
But isn't that, I am not the Supreme Court, obviously, but doesn't that sound so contradictory, na marginalized sector at meron kang
True.
padrino?
That was Mike Arroyo, right?
Yeah.
Security guy.
Yeah. We'll return to the partial and official results. Resorts ako ng resorts tonight. Baka kailangan
We
din ng
need a break.
bakasyon lahat
Yeah.
kasi pagod na tayo from the past 90 days. Over 57.76% yung transmission at this point.
It's not real change, Not yet.
You can check out the Rappler site for the partial and unofficial results based on the transmission. Again, based ito sa COMELEC transparency server. Okay, hindi pa naman naggumalaw masyado ang results, but let's go through it. Again, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, the son of the dictator, leading the presidential race with over, hold on, mahina ang kalaban, mahina ang mata ng kalaban. 18,975,119 votes so far. That's with 57.76% of precincts reporting as of May 9:11 p.m. Again, ito po yung unofficial at partial results based on real-time data from the COMELEC transparency server. Lenny Robredo at a very distant second with 8,979,607 votes. Manny Pacquiao at third with over 1,639,535 votes. Outgoing Manila Mayor Isko Moreno Domagoso with 1,268,386 votes. Ping Lacson with a little over 607,000 votes. Faisal Mangundato with a little over 73,000 votes. Ernie Abella with over 57,000 votes. Leody de Guzman with over 51,900 votes. Norberto Gonzales with over 47,000 179,000 votes, and Jose Montemayor with over 33,268 votes. Sa vice presidential race naman, again, 57.76% of precincts reporting. As of 9:11 p.m. tonight, unofficial partial results based on the real-time data from the COMELEC transparency server, Sara Duterte leading the vice presidential race with 18,588,524 votes. That's 59.83% of yung mga nag-report pa lang na precinct. So far, Kiko Pangilinan at a distant second with over 5,696,000 votes. Vicente Soto with over 5.1 million votes. Willie Ong with over 1.2 million votes. Lito Atienza with 134,000 votes. Manny Lopez with over 75,000 votes. Weldon Belli with over 52,000 votes. Carlos Serapi with over 44,000 votes. And Rizalita David with over 20,000 votes so far. Again, these are the unofficial and partial results based on the real-time data from the COMELEC transparency server. Baka nagtataka kayo. Again, magiging official lamang siya kung yung COMELEC na mismo, yung mahabang proseso kasi yun. The trend is really following yung mga opinion polling, no? Siguro yung tanong nga nito, we'll go into the specifics kasi we were overtaken by events and we haven't discussed pa yung mga specific situation kasi we focused a lot on NCR earlier when we talked about the voting situation. The way the trend is going, siguro nga yung biggest question ngayon, bukod sa, yung victory, baka tama yung victory tone ng Unity Team Alliance. But again, I think the bigger question would be for the volunteers of the Robredo Pangilinan campaign, no?
I think just a quick look at Twitter, for example, what's trending. Well, I couldn't say nakakaiyak. For example, has 45,000 tweets. And then there are other things I couldn't say on air.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a sense of frustration.
Yeah.
Just a cursory look at Twitter.
Yeah.
But again, I would only emphasize that this is still a partial result in that there's a geographic component to this. If you will remember the 2016 vice presidential race, there was a sweet spot. I think the transition between May 9 and May 10 where Robredo overtook Marcos. Marcos had a lead initially, but Robredo took over. But from the gap we're seeing right here is quite a sizable gap. Yeah, let's see how that goes.
We will be bringing you more updates as more results come in via the transparency server. Pero let's talk about muna yung situation ng election sa ibang lugar dito sa Pilipinas kasi nga kanina tsaka yung bulk din ng discussion ng COMELEC mismo, 'di ba? Was on NCR where the PNP did declare na generally peaceful daw yung elections. Inday, maybe walk us through what's happening in parts of Mindanao.
Well, we had there was a really big mess earlier in Mindanao kanina, no? So we have at least initially 4 and there have been reports that it may have increased to 6. So ano bang pinanggagalingan ng gulo niyan sa Mindanao? It's actually local. It's a local thing, no? In Atake, they were tried to destroy the vote counting machine and you could see naghahampasan. There was a lot of really violence. And then that's when Froy, actually, the first time I saw it, I didn't see any shots. But Froy was saying that, he'd been alerted that there had been shots and that the army was coming to see what was happening there. There's something about the Philippines, the smaller, the poorer these communities are, the more violent sometimes.
Yeah, the more vulnerable they are.
And that's very similar to Abra, where you go like, what are they fighting over in Abra? Well, first in Abra, for example, where there have been a barangay captain has been killed.
Yeah.
Another Kagawad has been shot dead in his sleep. a security aide has been killed in a very bizarre case where the cops have charged the mayor and the vice mayor, who are siblings, by the way, and children of an assassinated mayor who has never had justice for that murder. So it's like generational. It goes on and on. But so the police charged them with trafficking because it turns out that all these bodyguards were ex-military men. And I don't know why it suddenly became trafficking. Like, do these military men have IQs below zero, that they were fooled by, civilians into going to Abra? I don't think so. Abra's a long record of hiring ex-military men for the security forces. But now, the same police officers who charged the mayor and the vice mayor have been charged by the National Bureau of Investigation for murder, including they've pulled out, they've relieved the entire town police contingent. They put in the regional mobile security force of the police and the NBI, and this very same force is included in the groups that the NBI is charging for the murder of security aid. So it's like, what's going to happen there? So the COMELEC is technically in control, but let's be honest about it. Without security forces, control means nothing, in places like this. So we don't know. And that's in Pilar. In Bangat, the former mayor has been accused of being a mastermind in a very recent killing also. And it's not the first time that he's been accused, the second, but he's out on bail and he claims it's harassment. He hasn't been arrested, it's still with the prosecutor. And in the Bangat case, the strange thing is they're all relatives. The cousins, the parents are cousins. In 1 year they're allies, and 3 years after they're pointing guns at each other. Then they go back to bed together, and it goes on and on. So really, people are asking, especially if a person hasn't been to Abra, people will ask, ano ba yung nasa Abra? Tobacco. We have 3 laws at least that give hindi lang yung excise taxes, and mas mataas ngayon, yung excise taxes for tobacco. There's a special fund. There are 3 different sources of funds. And pag tinignan natin to, billion. Hindi tayo nag-uusap ng tens of millions. We're talking billions of pesos. No, Abra is, it has a vast space. It is a small population. Ang laki ng pera niya. So, and there's one town which has been one of the most violent towns. Ito yung pinag-uugatan pa ng ibang patayan dito ngayon ay it was the poorest town, but it had millions and millions in IRA na mas mataas na ngayon. By the way, I think JC will probably be able to explain that more. And now the stakes are higher kasi kukunti ang populasyon nila, ang laki ng pera nila, may tabako pa sila. You don't wonder why the stakes are so high that so much bloodshed is, we see so much bloodshed in there. So, and I think for some, in a very similar way, the Lanao and some of the rural provinces in Mindanao are the same thing. Iba lang yung crops nila doon na inaano, or sometimes it's mining, sometimes it's natural gas, minerals and all that stuff. So.
Parang layers upon layers. You have the formerly from the armed forces, political dynasties. Actually, from the top of the show, from this morning, parang yun yung recurring theme in a lot of the live spots that we were in, na parang, how will voters make a good choice when the choices are limited? Right? And I think that's a recurring problem in Philippine democracy, hindi lang Philippine politics.
Parang chicken and egg yun eh. On the other hand, the choices are exactly that because the people may not have, may not have tried better, when they could at certain point in time, like, after EDSA, in the 90s, and all that stuff. So,
Okay. I think, are we ready to show? Oh, okay. We'll be showing you in a little bit the map
where the votes are coming from?
where
Oh,
on
good,
where the
okay.
votes are coming from. There you go. Let's start with the National Capital Region, the second most vote-rich region in the Philippines. Again, consistent with opinion polling on NCR. If you click NCR, okay, let's take a zoomed out look muna. Later na, mamaya na yung NCR. Obviously, red represents Bongbong Marcos Jr., pink represents Leni Robredo. Again, ito naman, this is so far, we have 61.05% of precincts reporting as of May 9, 9:25 p.m. Again, unofficial partial results based on real-time data from the COMELEC transparency server. Majority red, as you can see. Ngayon, sa
For the
mapa.
Visayas, no? And Bicol.
And parang kumbaga yung mga expected na strongholds, bailiwicks
yun
ni
lang,
Vice President Leni Robredo are showing a pink based on 61% of votes being transmitted. Ay, ilang areas lang yung hindi red or pink. We have Lanao del Sur. If you click through the green, that represents Faisal, Mangundato. Pero at this rate, medyo mababa pa ata yung transmission from Lanao del Sur. And then you also have a tiny portion of baby blue, bright blue. It's Manny Pacquiao. It's from Sarangani
The little blue
province.
thing right
Of
there.
course, the home province of Senator Manny Pacquiao. Kumbaga, if you look at the map, no, parang mabilis lang natingin sa map. It's really consistent with the opinion polling so far, or the last opinion polls. Siguro mas madali to enumerate muna the places in the provinces that are pink so far, or therefore na majority na si Leni Robredo so far ang nanalo in those provinces based on the unofficial and partial transmissions from the COMELEC transparency server. Hold on.
If you look at the map, the pink regions seem to have been sandwiched by the north and the south.
It's the
Completely-
Bicol and Visayas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bicol and Visayas, yeah.
Okay, we'll go back to the map in a bit. Again, consistent with, parang yun yung question, no, before May 9, na parang will the opinion polling in the Philippines be, kumbaga, shake ba yung polling industry in the Philippines? I recall a lot of supporters were bringing out Google search data to counter that, and of course you have other sectors bringing out also scientific surveys na to showing na it was Vice President Robredo in fact who was leading instead of Bongbong Marcos, but Pulse Asia is the only na talagang kumbaga
Active in this
yung talagang mahaba yung track record. There are of course other survey firms that released data, pero yung Pulse Asia sobrang haba ng track record nun. SWS unfortunately did not release regular surveys in this election cycle. May mga lumabas na SWS, but usually they were commissioned surveys na pinayagang i-release into the public. So far, based on the unofficial and partial results, again, from the COMELEC transparency server, Bongbong Marcos is leading the presidential race and Sara Duterte is leading the vice presidential race. Yung numbers so far consistent with opinion polling ahead of the May 9 elections.
I think it's fair to say that in general, the results of Pulse Asia are quite accurate at the national level. I think the issue that's come up in recent weeks is that the way they, for example, report the figures from certain socioeconomic groups, that's the issue right there. It's not representative if you look at certain socioeconomic groups. For example, in the first three surveys of Pulse Asia this year, they were not at all able to include Class A and B. So some people are saying that even if you include A and B, the results overall for the nation as a whole will not really change. But yes, I mean that flaw in the methodology has come to light. I think there are ways. Even Pulse Asia admits that there are things that they need to work on to improve their methodologies. But yeah, I mean the overall results are in line with what we're seeing right now. Notwithstanding the fact that we're only seeing partial and unofficial results.
Parang siguro naalala ko yung na-point out ni Lelo earlier this morning, no, na parang kumbaga the true last big surprise talaga of this election was in fact the alliance of Bongbong Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte.
Was it really a surprise?
Or it was parang kumbaga hindi siya surprise, pero siguro the more accurate word would be parang talagang game changer in the election. We say that only in the context of the three male presidential candidates. You have Mayor Isko Moreno, Senator Ping Lacson, and former Defense Chief Norberto Gonzales, diba, with their press conference that they hyped as kumbaga parang a game changer or diba, parang a combo breaker in this election. But really, you can trace it back to November 2021, noong in-announce nga yung coalition ni Bongbong Marcos at ni Sara Duterte, in effect consolidating the powers of the ano ba, yung reach ng dalawang clans na yun heading into the 2022 elections. Kasi again, yung context nito, diba, it was Sara Duterte who was leading early presidential polls. Medyo malayo pa nga at one point si Bongbong Marcos sa very, very early preference polls. It's really Sara who was leading. And then you have, at one point, Isko Moreno, even Senator Manny Pacquiao, showing up well in mga early preference polls. But I think once nag-coalesce yung dalawa, okay, I think we have on the line Mara Cepeda, live from the Naga Media Center, in the Media Center in Naga City. Mara?
It's radio silence so far from the camp of presidential candidate and Vice President Leni Robredo as the partial unofficial results have started coming in, and we're seeing again such a huge lead by the late dictator son Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. If this trend continues until 100% transmission, it means the surveys have been right all along and her supporters have been proven wrong. Many of them had the initial reaction all the time to disregard the surveys. But, if we are going to base it at, over at least 53% transmission, then it means that Bongbong Marcos could really be the next president of the Philippines. But of course, we do have to wait for that. Officially, there has still been no word from key people on the campaign, but we know that Robredo spokesperson Barry Gutierrez is here in Naga City. He is at the home. Is actually in Magarao town. I correct myself. Magarao is where VP Leni resides now, and we know that Barry Gutierrez is there along with other members of her staff and her family, and we're still waiting for any updates. If there's going to be talk about concession, because of course that is the elephant in the room, is Leni Robredo going to concede at this point of the transmission? We are waiting for that. There are supporters, of course, we have been monitoring them. They haven't been posting a lot. I would imagine that the results so far are quite disheartening for them. They are monitoring it. So if anything, I think the Robredo campaign needs to address their supporters soon. And they will definitely take their cue from Vice President Leni Robredo. But I think it's important for me to highlight that this morning, VP Leni is at peace. She said that she knows that she has done what has been, physically possible in the past 90-day campaign period. We know that she has been working very, very hard on the campaign trail, and she's content. And she was calm and composed when we met her earlier today, and she knew she had done everything that she could. She knew that her supporters have done everything that they could, and I think she takes particular pride in the fact that the Robredo campaign was won on a manner that they can be proud of. So she's saying wala silang ginawa na hindi maganda. That was the verbatim quote of the Vice President earlier this morning. We are here at the media center that her campaign team have set up for the media following her. So far, we haven't seen any any key people from the campaign meeting us, giving us an update. So we're still waiting for that. Bea?
Yeah. Mara, you mentioned earlier no, in previous reports rather that in the meeting the Avance parang yung overarching tone was really pasasalamat at a recognition of the awesome work that her volunteers have been doing. That would be Leni Robredo herself and Kiko Pangilinan. But how about the campaign? Because I know that you've been spending as the embedded reporter in the Robredo Pangilinan campaign. Like, yung mga tao sa campaign team, yung mga tao na maaaring hindi kilala ng mga casual viewers at readers ng balita, how have they been processing also? Like you mentioned, we haven't heard from them given the unofficial and partial transmission results so far, no? Pero how have they been processing yung pink wave or yung support from the volunteers from the last 90 days?
I think that a lot of the people in the campaign, from the top to to the staff, I think they're all very proud of what the Robredo campaign has achieved. This massive volunteer movement, has not been seen in the Philippines since a very, very long time. Some would say since the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution, when Filipinos toppled the father of Bongbong Marcos, the dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr. And I think the kakampink crowd and the campaign team of VP Leni are proud of that. And I think that's why her meeting the Avances message primarily focused on that, thanking the supporters for doing everything that they can. I have also been starting monitoring the reactions from people in her campaign. I would say that some of them are starting to accept what is the inevitable. We are waiting until what percentage sila tatanggapin that they probably have lost this high-stakes elections, but there are also certain people in the campaign and supporters in particular, the ordinary people who really went out of their way, went out into the streets, spent their own money, used their own time, hoping that the remaining transmission of votes that have yet to come in will actually be in favor of Robredo. And so I think right now it's really just a matter of time. I think VP Leni herself would need to have to make that call if she would concede or if she is going to wait until the last vote is counted. She did say, a couple of weeks ago that this battle between her and Marcos and the kind of politics that he represents is a fight down to the finish. So it's possible that hanggang pamarningan tayo dito hanggang matapos yung botohan before we would be able to get official word from Robredo and her campaign team. Bea?
Probably, Mara, because I seem to recall that there were a couple of times when there was mention of internal surveys that made people within the Robredo camp seem more upbeat than what we would think their mood would be given the Pulse Asia. Do you have any sense that was this just pep talk, or did they actually really believe that there was something there that maybe the rest of us don't know about?
What I can say is that the performance of VP Leni Robredo in their internal surveys are slightly better than the Pulse Asia and the other major pre-election surveys that have been publicized. And so their guarded optimism, that's the term that I would borrow from certain campaign sources that I've been speaking to the past days, is rooted from their internal surveys where Robredo's numbers are slightly higher than what we're seeing in the surveys that have been publicly released, but it's consistent. Marcos is still leading, even in their internal surveys. So the key people in the campaign, have prepared for this kind of scenario that perhaps really the numbers have been correct all along.
So, just one more follow-up question with you, because you're the one who's, andyan ka talaga. You're immersed in that campaign. We know that this information is blamed a lot of times for the advantage of the Marcos camp, but it can't just be disinformation. From your vantage point, ano pa ang mga aspeto ng lipunan natin siguro or our politics that has played to the advantage of Ferdinand Marcos Jr.?
I think the Filipino people, as a nation, we are such a forgiving, forgetful nation. We often tend to give in to nostalgia. And that doesn't really play well when you have the money and the machinery of the Marcoses playing in that culture that we have. And they spent years fortifying that disinformation network, just sanitizing their image and erasing Filipinos' memories of the abuses and atrocities committed under martial law. If anything, what hurt the Robredo campaign isn't that she was attacked. Of course, that's really such a major factor. But I think one of the big setbacks of the Robredo campaign is that Robredo did not prepare early enough for her presidential campaign. And she did have an interview with our Rappler CEO and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Ressa, where she said that she regrets not having acted early enough in rallying the people against that massive disinformation network of the Marcoses. She says part of her actually blames herself that she did not do enough. But see, that's the irony with Leni Robredo. A lot of her supporters would argue that the reason why she is qualified to become the next president of the Philippines is because she didn't have any ambition of power. She didn't have, she's not attracted to the trappings of power. But again, reality sa politika sa Pilipinas, kung gusto mong manalo, kailangan matagal pa lang na ayos na yung makinarya mo. And Leni Robredo only started building her machinery after she declared her candidacy. We have to remember she declared, I believe, second to the last day of the filing of candidacies, and ever since then, she has been playing catch up. So the pink wave is incredible. We haven't seen that kind of dedication and passion from a lot of Filipinos. There are a lot of first-time voters. There are people who haven't been joining political rallies, who started going to multiple rallies of the Robredo campaign, and that's admirable. But the problem is it just didn't start on time. And if Robredo loses, then it's because she didn't have enough time.
Parang kumbaga nga, parang what endeared her to her supporters also in a way politically was a huge disadvantage to her. Yeah. Again, we have Mara reporting live from Naga, from the media center in Naga City. Also to add to Mara's point kanina about nostalgia, it's a global phenomenon din, and oftentimes it's a false nostalgia.
That's why Putin is Putin.
Yeah.
Nostalgia
it's nostalgia on a false, or rather a created reality. But meantime, we have Lian Buwan to give us updates from the Lawag race. Lian.
Hello, Bea. We are here reporting live from the City Hall of Lawag. We are watching closely itong Ilocos Norte because Barbong Marcos is leading as of now in the national. Team Marcos seems to be dominating also dito sa local, although hindi pa kompleto yung boto dito sa City Hall of Lawag with 50% of votes transmitted. Nangunguna yung kanilang, well, hindi nangunguna, nakapala kanina. Nangunguna ngayon yung niece-in-law ni Rudy Fariñas, ni si Sheville Fariñas by only 400 votes. Second, a close second is yung pinsan ng mga Marcos na si Lawag City Mayor Michael Marcos Kion. Behind by probably 8,000 votes yung Team Marcos bet for Lawag Mayor na si Vicentito Lazo. So, it's interesting to note na yung Team Marcos bet ay yung pinaka nahuhuli ngayon. But kung si Michael Marcos Kion man ang manalo, even though he's not the official Team Marcos bet, he is still a Marcos. Cheville Fariñas leading by 400 in the Lawag City Hall is a good sign for Team Fariñas because dito mula sa Lawag, Team Marcos is leading. Take note that this is just precincts from Lawag, pero Lawag has always been Fariñas bailiwick. Pero with 50% transmitted from Lawag precincts, nangunguna si Governor Matthew Marcos Manotoc, nangunguna rin si Sandro Marcos over Congresswoman Rhea Fariñas. Again, that's Governor Matthew Marcos Manotoc leading in Lawag over Congressman Rudy Fariñas, and Sandro leading over Rhea.
Lian, may expected ba na time for the counting to be finished, the official counting, kasi you're reading from the transparency server so far, di ba?
Dito sa Lawag, actually, sinabihan na kami na by 9 p.m., we would have 100% of votes transmitted. Pero yung as of 9 p.m. na votes na yun ay hindi pa nire-release ngayon. Anong oras na ba? 9:47 p.m. Actually, we have been waiting for that because once the Lawag precincts are complete, we would pull out to the and go to the capital para tignan na yung kabuuan ng Ilocos Norte to see whether Matthew will lead over Rudy and kung mangunguna ba talaga si Sandro over Rhea. And we want to go to the streets also because if Bongbong Marcos is leading by that much in the national, we want to see how the Ilocos Norte folks are reacting.
Yeah.
Okay. Lian, there were some skirmishes between the Fariñas and the Marcos camp, last week, no? Ito bang in the last 2 days of bago ng election and kanina, tahimik rin ba? Tahimik na ba yung lugar dyan?
Relatively tahimik, pero yung matagal nang kinocomplain ni Congressman Rudy Fariñas na checkpoint na pinalibutan yung kanilang residence dito sa Lawag ay nandun pa rin kanina. We were just in the residence of the Fariñases for a small press conference kanina. And Congressman Rudy Fariñas was still complaining about bakit sa residence nila pinalibot. He was also complaining why Matthew imposed a curfew, even calling the order illegal. But relatively calm and tense yung situation kanina, as of kanina.
Lian, you were covering the Marcos family, not just Bongbong Marcos Jr. earlier when they voted there in Ilocos, no? Ano yung general mood? I know that you tried to get an ambush interview with Bongbong Marcos Jr. but again, down to the very last day of the election period, hindi siya nagpa-unlock ng ambush interview. Pero ano yung general sense, ano yung mood ng mga, not just both siguro the Marcos family and their allies in their home turf?
Ako, I could sense that there was some, to an extent, a nervousness for Team Marcos in the local level as of when the local elections is concerned. Because even residents here don't know who will win between Team Marcos and Team Fariñas. But they are confident for sure that at least dito sa Ilocos Norte, Bongbong Marcos will definitely win here in Ilocos Norte.
Yeah.
So kanina nga sa mga unang release ng votes dito sa Lawag City Hall, pag-flash nung boto with Bongbong Marcos having 36,000 compared to Robredo's I think 1,000 lang. Siyempre, palpable yung feeling na of course that will be the result.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone expected Bongbong Marcos Jr. to get a real challenge sa presidential race in his hometown, home province of all places. We'll be calling Lian in maybe tomorrow na siguro or later kung may mga bagong updates. Again, Lian is covering Bongbong Marcos Jr. And his race for the presidency, as well as the Marcos clan that's basically seeking to solidify, and entrench themselves even further in Ilocos Norte. Maraming salamat, Lian. Kanina pang umaga ang ating mga reporters live on the field from the time the polls opened, hanggang ngayon na nagtatransmit na from the via the COMELEC transparency server. Again, if we're wondering kung bakit pinag-uusapan din natin yung Ilocos Norte, ano rin kasi parang sa Davao City you see the Duterte dynasty in Davao City. Also the Team Marcos, the Marcos dynasty in Ilocos. We have live footage from the headquarters of Bongbong Marcos. Rambo Dalabon is reporting that. Listen in. Okay, we can't quite hear Rambo, although he is speaking kasi medyo maingay. Yung headquarters ng Marcos campaign is located along EDSA in Mandaluyong, so maingay talaga yan. There seems to be a group of Marcos supporters. Yung iba naka-campaign shirts, yung iba mukhang galing pa trabaho at naka-uniform pa. Again, yung HQ ng Marcos campaign kasi ay nasa Mandaluyong along EDSA, kaya medyo maingay. It's still a small group, but you would understand the jubilance at this point kasi with kanina over 60% of transmission ng unofficial partial results, Bongbong Marcos Jr. was leading by a very wide margin over his closest rival, Vice President Leni Robredo. Let's try to listen to Rambo, if we can hear him na.
Kami ay tatagal dito sa headquarters ng mga kasamaan sa Duterte. Kapag matapos sa coverage namin, hindi namin alam kailan. Ma-uncover pa kami sa latest na announcement ng BBM sa Unit Team dito sa kanilang headquarters. Sabayan niyo kami. Kasi Rambo Talabon, nagre-report dito. Maraming salamat sa panahon.
Okay, Rambo will probably try to go live again later kung may mga bagong nangyayari sa Bongbong Marcos headquarters. You couldn't quite hear him earlier kanina kasi again yung HQ kasi ni Bongbong Marcos ay located along EDSA. Katabi talaga literally ng EDSA in Mandaluyong. Yung kaharap naman ng HQ ni Bongbong Marcos is the Lakas CMD HQ. Lakas CMD is the national party of the outgoing Davao Mayor Sara Duterte. We haven't actually heard from the Sara. Let me check my groups because I also cover Sara Duterte. So far, parang wala pang sinasabi or wala pang no word yet from the Duterte camp, from HNP also hugpong ng pagbabago. That's Sara Duterte's regional party. No word also from Lakas CMD, but Sara Duterte is leading the vice presidential race by a lot. Let's give you a quick update of the partial unofficial results. Kanina pa ako resorts. Gutom na tayo for a vacation and a break. But can you bring up the presidential and vice presidential race? You can access this on the Rappler website. Tama ba? Yes. With 63.76% of precincts reporting as of May 9, 2022, 9:39 p.m. Again, ito ay unofficial partial results based on real-time data from the COMELEC Transparency Server. Bongbong Marcos Jr. is leading by a very, very wide margin, over 20.9 million votes. That would be 59.74% of the precincts that have reported so far to the transparency server. Leni Robredo, a distant second with over 9.9 million votes. That's 28.25% so far of the transmissions that have reached the transparency server. Third is Manny Pacquiao, followed by Manila Mayor Isko Moreno Dumagoso, and then Senator Ping Lacson, Faisal Mongondato, then Ernie Abella, followed by Labor Leader Leody de Guzman, and then Norberto Gonzales, and finally Jose Montemayor Jr. Let's take a look at the vice presidential race, again with 63.78% of precincts reporting as of today, 9:39 p.m. unofficial partial results. Ito based on real-time data from the COMELEC Transparency Server. Sara Duterte, the outgoing mayor of Davao City, leading by a mile with 21.39 million votes, representing 60% of yung nagtatransmit so far. Senator Kiko Pangilinan, the running mate of Leni Robredo, with 6.5 million votes, 18.28% of the votes transmitted to the transparency server so far. And then you have Senator Tito Soto trailing at third, Willie Ong at fourth, Lito Atienza at fifth, Manny Lopez at sixth, Walden Bello at seventh, Carlos Serapio at eighth, and Rizalito David at ninth. If you want to check the results for yourself, you can go to the Rappler website. You'll find it there para makita nyo yung unofficial and partial results from the COMELEC transparency server. Let me pull up the URL for you para hindi kayo mahirapan at makita nyo sa mga browsers nyo rin. Yeah, you can just go to the Rappler website and you can find the information there. This will be a long night, especially I think for the not just the Robredo campaign, honestly, no, kasi normally nakatutok ka sa campaign team lang, no, yung mga yung talagang sign up kumbaga to work in the campaign. But I think for Leni Robredo supporters, more than any other presidential campaign, this will probably be a little extra heartbreaking kasi not to say that previous supporters of losing presidential or candidates who might just lose the presidential race haven't invested as much as your supporters, but again, at least in my lifetime, in my 3-decade lifetime, I haven't seen this level of talagang time, resources, no? Financial resources. Again, coming off from a horrible 2 years, emotionally, economically, for a lot of Filipinos, we saw people stand up and volunteer, bring money out. And I think pa nga, are we gonna listen into...
Can we hear him now?
Rambo? Okay.
Hello, Bea. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rambo. Go ahead. You are at the
Yes,
Bongbong
hello,
Marcos
Bea.
HQ. Go ahead, Rambo.
Hello. Sa mga nanonood, ako si Rambo Talamong, narito tayo ngayon, along EDSA, Mandaluyong, sa headquarters ni BBM at saka ni Sara, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, at Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte. Nakita niyo doon sa mga nagtitipon-tipon na dito para ipahayag ang kanilang suporta para kay Bongbong Marcos at saka kay Sara Duterte. Ang sigaw nila, may nanalo na, panalo ka na. Ito na ang ating bagong administrasyon. Ito ang kanilang sinisigaw dito. Dito sa banda dito may sinisigaw ng BBM. At meron din na sign doon na sinasabi na kung kayo sumusuporta kay Sara Duterte at saka kay Bongbong Marcos, bumusina kayo. Kaya kung makakakinig kayo ng mga busina dito, yun ay dahil doon sa placard na sinasabi na ipakita ang suporta para kay Duterte at saka kay Marcos. Itong mga tao dito sa likod natin, actually hindi sila ganito karami kanina. Mga sasampu lang sila nung dumating tayo dito ng mga 9:30 p.m. Pero pa isa-isa silang dumadating. May sarili-sariling sasakyan, meron mga bus, at sila ay nagpapakita dito, sabay-sabay na tumatalo, nagpapakita ng suporta kay Marcos at saka kay Duterte. Talagang tuwang-tuwa sila. Ang atmosphere dito, tuwang-tuwa ang mga tao. Masaya para nagpiesta. At may alam mo ba, pumunta ako dito sa Mandaluyong ng 9 p.m. Mula Maynila, meron nagpapaputok doon. Nagpapakita rin ng suporta kay Marcos at saka kay Duterte. So hindi lang ito dito sa Unity HQ, nararamdaman din siya sa ibang lugar. Bea?
Rambo, since wala sigurong access si Rambo sa map so far, no, based on the unofficial and partial results, NCR thus far with 66% of precincts reporting sa COMELEC transparency server, NCR is red, predominantly for Marcos Jr. Rambo, nakausap mo na ba yung mga supporters ni Bongbong Marcos dyan? Saan sila galing? Did they just show up spontaneously at naki-celebrate na sila dyan sa Mandaluyong?
Yes, galing sa pagboto sila. At iba dito naka-uniforme pa. Kasi uniforme trabaho, galing sa trabaho. Kahit naka-holiday, trabaho sila, pumunta sila dito ngayon. So, naramdaman talaga nila yung hatak ng headquarters dito sa Mandaluyong Bea para ipakita ang kanilang suporta para sumama sa selebrasyon.
We have a question from JC.
Yes, Rambo.
Yes.
So, parang di ba? Parang in a way, parang marami nang umasa dito sa resultang ito, pero parang, and then nakita natin na parang random people coming from the precincts themselves ay parang ayan, nagsi-celebrate na sila. Pero sa tingin mo yung gap between Vice President Robredo and Bongbong Marcos, ano kaya ang evolution nun? Or parang malayo ng habulin? Ano kasi parang 11 million votes ang hahabulin and we're now at above 60%. Ano, parang mahirap na. Ano? Parang doon na talaga papunta.
JC, anong tanong mo na saan galing yung gap na yun?
Yun. O, hindi, sa tingin mo, magbabago pa kaya yun? Or parang wala na? Parang isa forgone, parang doon na tayo patungo talaga.
Alam mo, JC, mga tao rin dito, kahit na nagtatalunan sila, tinitingnan pa rin nila yung resulta. Ayaw nila magbago ito. At daman-daman nila, sabi nila, yung mga kasama pa naming iba, aambag pa dyan sa lamang ni Marcos. At sa pagkakaintindi ko, para sa kanila, talagang hindi na makahabol. Hanggang dyan na lang. Talagang panalo na si Marcos, kaya tuwang-tuwa sila dito. Sumusulat-sulat pa rin sila dito sa headquarters ng media kung saan meron tayong monitor kung ilan yung porsyento ni Marcos, Robredo, ibang mga kandidato. Pero para sa kanila, in English, it's in the bag. Talagang may nanalo na para sa kanila. Mahirap ng habulin, kaya talagang nagkatuwaan na talaga dito.
So kumbaga Rambo, may set up pala sila dyan for passers-by also to see yung transparency survey results. Tama ba kapag intindi ko?
Exactly. Yes, Dea. Pwede kong ipaan yung camera ng sarili dito. So makikita nyo, ito yung nandito screen, pinapakita yung resulta. Medyo malabo lang siya from our camera, pero nandiyan yung mga numero. At may iba rin dito mga monitor ng iba't ibang estasyon ng media para makita ng mga tao. Ang pinapapasok lang dito, Bea, JC, ay mga media personnel. Meron tayong stamp dito para makapasok. Pero yung mga tao, hindi naman nila kailangan makinig eh. Konting tingin lang nila, kita nila kung ano ang latest results ng unofficial partial transmissions.
Salamat, Rambo. To add to Rambo's report din, parang ito rin ay actually parang in the three meeting the advances of the Uniteam Alliance, parang thank you, Rambo. Again, Rambo is reporting live from the BBM HQ. That's in Mandaluyong along EDSA. Kung may mga bagong updates siguro from the Marcos camp, we'll be bringing Rambo in again. Many thank yous, Rambo. Kanina ka pa rin gising mula Cavite papuntang Mandaluyong. Thank you, Rambo. As I was saying earlier, parang the Marcos campaign because they held three meeting the advances in Luzon, first in Visayas and then in Mindanao and then in Luzon. Parang recurring theme bukod sa yung nanalo na chance from their supporters. Although nagsimula yan nung Cebu pa lang, china-chant na yan yung chant syempre sa Cebu ay daog na nanay ni daog panalo na. Someone has won the presidential race already. But in the meeting the advances, parang yung recurring theme or recurring message of the Marcos and the Duterte campaign, bukod sa pagpapasalamat siguro at paulit-ulit dun nga sa unity na yon, is yung nag-stand out sa akin yung bawal matulog. Ginawa pa ngang joke ni Bongbong Marcos, 'di ba, na maraming kape ang iinumin natin sa pagbabantay ng boto. May halong disinformation 'yun kasi hihirit pa siya na baka
nanalo siya last time.
Na baka manakaw pa baka I forget the exact words, but implying that the vice presidency was stolen from him. Of course, that's not true. Vice President Leni Robredo absolutely won the 2016 vice presidential race. Napagdesisyonan na yan ng Supreme Court, but that was 2016. We're now talking about the 2022 national elections. Nag-face off ulit si Vice President Leni Robredo and si Bongbong Marcos. And based on unofficial partial results from the COMELEC transparency server, Bongbong Marcos is leading by a huge margin over Vice President Leni Robredo. Again, just to pull up the numbers, yung dalawa lang, huwag natin muna basahin kasi di pa naman nagbabago yung numbers, no? You have 21.7 million votes so far for Bongbong Marcos with 66.1% of precincts reporting as of 9:54 p.m. Is that right? That's right. And then you have Vice President Leni Robredo trailing with 10.2 million votes. That represents 28.25% of the 66.1 precincts reporting. So nasa 66% na tayo. 2/3 na yan of precincts reporting to the transparency server over at the vice presidential race. mas malaki pa nga ata yung chunk ni Sara Duterte ng votes
Yes.
sa transmission so far. Although in terms of absolute value, mas marami pa yung kay Bongbong Marcos. We have Sara Duterte, the mayor of Davao City, with 21.39 million votes, representing 60.1% of the 66.1 precincts, reporting to the COMELEC transparency server. Very distant second, we have Kiko Pangilinan with 6.5 million votes, representing 18.28% of the 66.1% of precincts reporting. Wala pa tayong narinig, tulad nga ng sabi ni Mara kanina, who's reporting live from Naga City. We haven't heard from Leni Robredo or her camp. Kiko Pangilinan's camp also has not yet spoken, I believe.
Are we looking at the first majority president?
That was what people
Probably.
that was what people were it depends on which side of the electoral coin you are. It was what some people feared.
If that holds, probably.
Oh, kung hindi, syempre kung wala ka, kung ayaw mong manalo si Bongbong Marcos, kinatatakutan mo yung possibility na he might just be the first majority president in the post-EDSA era, no?
Can you go over?
Yeah,
over
let's try
Cebu?
to wait. Oh, okay, there you go. Hold on, let me refresh my page kasi mahina ang kalaban at hindi ko nakikita from a distance yung text ng map. So you're looking at the map based on the partial and unofficial transmissions sa COMELEC transparency server. Hold on. Ayaw mag-load on my part. Sige, let's try to do with the map that's in front of me. Let's hover over the pink provinces. Mas madali siguro basahin yun kaysa isa-isahin yung red. Oh, we can't see the names quite yet, but kung sa mga medyo mas magaling sa geography, minsan kasali ako doon, minsan hindi. Pero if you look at the map, yung pink areas na yun naman talaga yung traditional bailiwicks of the Liberal Party. And also, these are the provinces that showed up big for Leni Robredo in 2016 in particular. And in the opinion polling, di ba? Dito, parang ito yung kumbaga bright spots ni Vice President Leni in the opinion polling. Yung pinakamalaking chunk doon sa bandang gitna ba yan? Sa taas, gitna. That would be Bicol.
Yeah,
Of course,
Quezon tapos Bicol dito.
Quezon up to Bicol, it's all pink. And then you have
Masbate.
the Samar the provinces in the Samar Island that endorsed where the incumbents endorsed Leni Robredo. And then you have Negros Occidental.
Yeah, that's divided. Occidental would
Yes.
be pink, Oriental would be red.
Yes.
Yes.
I always keep forgetting na na-dissolve na pala yung Negros Island region. Yung kabilang island naman sa Panay Island. Ano yung isa?
That's Aklan. That's red. Yes.
We have
the governor of Aklan is pretty strong and supports
Bongbong Marcos.
Marcos.
So you have the entire Panay Island, save for Aklan, in pink. Negros Island is divided into red and pink. So far, again, disclaimer na ito ay ano muna. Ito pa lang ay partial, percentage pa lang to, hindi pa to yung buong unofficial and partial results based on the transparency server.
But Cebu,
Cebu is red.
the Garcias
It
really
is-
worked for them.
Yeah, it's frankly not surprising because even ahead of the One Cebu endorsement, Bongbong Marcos was doing very well in Central Visayas. Unfortunately nga yung surveys kasi, it doesn't drill down to the provinces, rather yung regions, usually yung yung nire-represent nilang. But Bongbong Marcos was doing hindi siya sobrang dominant in Central Visayas, but given his lead over Robredo in the other regions, Vice President Robredo would have wanted a much comfortable preference number in Central Visayas. Again, paulit-ulit ako dito kasi nag-report din kami ni Ryan Macasero from Cebu. Cebu province is the most vote-rich province in the Philippines, over 3.2 million registered voters. At nabanggit na rin to ni Ryan in previous reports na Cebu tends to have a higher voter turnout, higher than the national average. Therefore, it's a very engaged electorate. And then in kailan ba yun? The third week of April, if I'm not mistaken, or the second week of April, the incumbent One Cebu decided to endorse not just Sara Duterte, who they've supported from the very beginning, but they also endorsed Bongbong Marcos Jr. In fact, hindi lang siya endorsement, it was an alliance between the ruling One Cebu and the UNI team. Nabanggit na rin to in earlier reports today, but that alliance represents not just the Garcia family supporting Bongbong Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte, but also the consolidation of their hold over Cebu province. Parang ito nga yung nasabi mo, Inday, no? yung the clans coming together, nag-uusap. If you talk to kasi we did talk to incumbents of Cebu, yung explanation din nila sa drive to bring together that, kasi One Cebu is the party, pero yung battle cry nila is One Cebu Island. As you can see, One Cebu Island is red. But although it would be interesting to see the breakdowns based on the districts and the cities of Cebu province. Although, as I was saying, yung One Cebu it wasn't just the consolidation or it wasn't just a move to support Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte, but it was absolutely to mag-consolidate ng powers yung mga incumbents ng Cebu. Yung governance side nito, ang sinasabi nila ay kasi they learned from the pandemic now na of course if you've been to Cebu, you would know this na parang magkakatabi lang yan, Mandaue, Cebu. Minsan nga hindi mo alam na nakatawid ka na pala ng mga cities. So that's Metro Cebu, and even the towns or the areas na mas malayo sa Metropolitan Cebu, no, parang na-realize sila because of the pandemic na you can't act as if you're separate from each other because literally parang imaginary line lang yung barrier between, let's say, Mandaue and Cebu City. So parang they learned from that, and then they realized it's better to work together, to be allies. Kasi traditionally, yung independent cities of Cebu province, talagang hindi sila magkaaway, pero bahala ka sa ginagawa nyo, bahala yung province sa ginagawa, parang ganun. So what they're saying is, yun nga, parang they want to work better together. But if you're a political animal, of course you see this as it consolidates your power. Diba?
At least ang Eastern Samar, the Everdones, and Northern Samar, they held. Ito yung mga naunang Rosa, di ba? Ito yung mga nauna para kay Vice President Lenny.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in Mindanao, but probably baka konti pa lang yan.
Can we scroll up a little bit to show
if you
people
can scroll up
Mindanao?
Mindanao.
All red, except for...
It's all red.
Because now I want to ask like what happened to the BARM guys.
Yeah.
But
although
baka pwedeng konti pa lang. I'm not
I just
sure
want to
na
point
parang-
out that Lanao del Sur was green earlier for Faisal Macondato, pero red na rin siya ngayon. Of course, you have to talk when you're talking about BARM, no? Although the UBJP did endorse Lani Robredo, 4 out of 5 governors support Bongbong Marcos. In fact, parang parang lumipad yung mga governors to Manila to parang kumbaga reiterate their support of Bongbong Marcos.
And there was that MNLF, di ba?
Yes.
The council versus the chairman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And but I'm interested, even Basilan, which is supposed to be Mujib's stronghold, isn't there, or Zamboanga City.
Yeah. But again, I think as we discuss yung alliances, endorsements, I like going back to the opinion polling. BARM was majority for Bongbong Marcos, much to the heartbreak of a lot of leaders in BARM, both incumbent na ayaw magsalita siguro in public because of political realities and alliances, but also a lot of the elders, no, because the Bangsamoro region was one of the kumbaga pinaka-nalugi at pinaka-nasaktan during the martial law years.
At hindi lang. Bongbong was against the law that created BARM. No?
Yeah.
On the other hand, the disappointed sila dahil for them, ang loyalty nila actually kay Duterte.
Yeah.
Because it was Duterte who managed to give them BARM,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
Former President, the late
Yeah.
President Aquino had jeopardized with
Yeah.
Mama Sapan.
Yeah, with that bungled police operation. Actually, no, if you think about it, no, that one bungled police operation, parang grabe yung domino effect leading up, in a way, up until the 2022 elections.
You would never have thought that Bongbong Marcos would
Yeah.
gain adherence.
Yeah.
In,
Because I covered, there was 1 week, actually, right before Ramadan, back-to-back si Bongbong Marcos, siya kasi Leni Robredo, they visited Marawi. That for Bongbong Marcos, yun yung parang Mindanao leg niya. And that's where he officially got actually, matagal na yung support, pero he officially got the endorsement, or parang, kumbaga, ceremonial endorsement of the incumbent Governor Adyong. And then the next day, Vice President Robredo visited Marawi. It was a much more
smaller.
It was a much smaller gathering, not just relative to Bongbong Marcos, but also to her usual gatherings. But it was a very symbolic one. Kasi ano yun parang one of the villages that the OVP helped build. And of course, Leni Robredo poured a lot of resources into Marawi because of the siege, right? So, when I was talking to people, especially the younger people, no, who were parang kumbaga the core of Robredo's volunteer team, parang they were saying na kumbaga because of the 2022 campaign, napag-aralan nila yung history ng mga ninuno nila kasi it's not always taught in school. Even the mga middle-aged people who in the volunteer team who I was talking to, parang sabi nila na napag-aralan niya lang or natuto lang siya sa Jabida in college. She didn't even learn it from her own relatives as a young person growing up in Marawi City. Pero parang kumbaga it's also a journey for the youth for some of the youth in Bangsamoro, no, to also rediscover the painful history of their ancestors. So yeah, parang the more I think about it now, parang ilang linggo din to at ilang buwan ng assessment ng historians. I would love to hear what Leloy has to say about this. But matagal-tagal din siguro to na days and weeks of analysis and tawag nito. Ano bang term? Not analysis. Pagmumuni-muni ng mga historians and analysts of the turnout of this election.
the biggest winner here is Rodrigo Duterte.
Really? Could you expound on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's exactly why Sarah is where she is at the moment. Because, she was leader, but for her to continue running, she would have a big target. It should be a big target because she was number one. And if she was going to go against Bongbong and Lenny at the same time, that would have been a very different race. But in sliding down to second place, she was suddenly everybody. And I've always said, when the Rosa people started coming out, I started laughing because as early as November last year, just shortly after the vice president had actually declared that she was going to run, I received a couple of calls from people, and the messages were curious because they were saying, what would you choose if it's an insurance that we won't have, that we will stop, because this was an anti-Marcos person talking, we will stop a return of the Marcoses of Malacanang. Would people be willing to allow Duterte to face lesser accountability for the 6 years that has passed? I was wondering, where was that coming from? I mean, how would you feel if it was Robredo Duterte? And I was wondering, I said, who? The president? I said, Robredo Duterte. And sure enough, a couple of months after, it was Rosa. Is Sarah, at that point, I think it was very clear that Sarah was unbeatable. Kasi naunahan niya na nga si Tito Soto. If you were whether Marcos or Lenny won, si President Duterte would have a protection, and whatever, however, he and Sarah might tangle at times. On that score, we're very sure that she's going to try to protect her father.
Yeah.
So it was interesting that they were going Rosa. But I'm not too sure. I think that probably a lot of the Rosa people, especially in Mindanao, were actually still for Marcos.
Yeah, yeah. Let's take a look at some of the local races so far in Manila. Where the outgoing mayor is Isko Moreno, who is running for president, pero so far parang nasa fourth ata siya. 90.59% of precincts reporting as of 10:09 p.m. These are unofficial partial results based on real-time data from the COMELEC transparency server. Honey Lacuna,
That's his close successor,
the
right?
incumbent vice mayor of Manila, leads with over 487,000 votes. That's 63.93% with 90.59% of precincts reporting to the transparency server. Trailing at a very distant second is Alex Lopez, and then Amado Bagatsing, Christy Lim, Elmer Hamias, and Onofre Abad.
That's very more than double
Yeah.
the second place.
Yeah,
Okay.
pinag-usapan natin kanina with Doc Josh, yung one of his personal concerns or parang things that piqued his interest was ano mangyayari sa plano ni Isko Moreno for Manila, because he did lay out a 10-year plan with Honey Lacuna seemingly poised to take on the City Hall. Mukhang siguro that would be
May continuity naman siguro yan.
For sure.
She's a doctor, right?
Yes, I believe she's also from an old name in Manila. Before we jump onto another city, we have Ralph Rivas live from Davao City at the City Board of Canvassers. Ralph?
Hi, Bea, mayang gabi, no? Medyo nag-ikot-ikot tayo dito sa Davao City, and so far, no festivities, no celebrations, despite the landslide numbers given the partial and unofficial tallies, no? Sabi nga ng ilang mga reporters dito, mingaw, yun nga, sa Bisaya, mingaw pa, Bea, mingaw pa diri sa Davao City. But so far, dito sa local races, no, Baste Duterte, Vice Mayor Baste Duterte leads by over 482,000, next to Roy Elias Lopez with over 53,000. No? Tapos, of course, yung for the vice mayoral race, unopposed naman yun. No? But again, yun yung curious dito sa Davao City. No? Kasi if you compare it doon sa report nila Rambo Talabong kanina, no? Talagang very very festive na sa Unity and HQ, pero ayun yun yung inaabangan natin. But I guess you have more input on this, no, Bea, on the dynamics dito sa Davao City, why it remains to be quiet, no? Kasi as I said in my previous reports, in the other regions, there are celebrations of the pink wave, red, blue, green, things like that. Pero dito it's very muted. Although I assume the camp of the Duterte family is celebrating the numbers right now. Pero the supporters medyo muted. So yeah, that's yun yung aabangan natin ngayon dito. For the local races, no, medyo matagal-tagal pa before we get the official results dito sa pag-canvass.
Siguro, Ralph, munang kaya mingaw, hilom sa Davao, because Davao City hasn't really hosted a major political rally, no? Even for the Unity team, parang hindi nag-host yung Davao City ng rally. Kaya rin siguro hindi nila ramdam masyado yung hype, unlike in other cities na talagang invested yung mga tao sa both in the national and local race. And I think I don't know if you would echo the same sentiment, but based on my early conversations with a lot of Davaoenos, there's also siguro a lack of excitement because it's another Duterte occupying the top
Yeah.
spots in City Hall, in the city legislature. So parang, ba't ka pa ma-excite Duterte? Parang, hindi ko alam, parang nag-give up ba sila or parang pagtanggap na lang din na it's the same old names in Davao City.
Now, kailangan nating tingnan din yung voter turnout dito, no? Kasi in the previous elections, Davao City had one of the lowest voter turnouts, no? Even in the first district with the most number of voters, they registered at around 58%, no? That's medyo malayo yun sa national average of over 75%. So again, abangan natin yan. And so far, dito sa unofficial partial results, no, I think Sara Duterte has over 60% of the votes, no, at 21 million. I don't know kung ano na yung latest, no. I guess you guys there in the studio have the latest numbers. But yeah, it's a landslide. So I don't know, yung imagination ko from a former Davaoenyo who grew up and was raised here and now living in Manila, I was expecting a celebration because it's a landslide so far, di ba? Based on dito sa unofficial partial results.
Although we'll see in the coming days, doesn't Sara Duterte have a pasasalamat tour in parang planado, di ba? Parang meron siyang Davao City, meron din siyang in NCR na pagpapasalamat. That's an interesting observation though, because in 2016, parang nanalo lahat sa loto when Rodrigo Duterte won the presidency.
Yeah, tumaas yung I guess tumataas yung voter turnout kapag presidential, no? In particular dito sa kay President Duterte when he ran back in 2016. Pero I think the number there is 75% yung voter turnout. That's one of the highest na for Davao City. But again, if you compare that to the national average of over 85%, naku, parang Davao City is not big in voting.
Yeah.
So also it seems.
Maraming salamat, Ralph Rivas, live from Davao City. Kung medyo mingaw. But of course, its outgoing mayor is leading the vice presidential race and by a lot. Thanks, Ralph. Let's look at another local race. We're looking at Cebu Province. Pinag-usapan natin kanina, no? The gubernatorial race. Gwen Garcia of One Cebu, the default matriarch, head of the Garcia dynasty in Cebu Province, is with 69.77% of precincts reporting as of 10:24 p.m. Unofficial partial results ito from the real-time data of the Comelec Transparency Server. Garcia has over 1 million votes. A very, very distant second so far is Ace Durano, her challenger, with just over 240,000 votes. At third is an independent candidate, Nito Magnanao, with just over 7,000 votes. For vice governor, Hilario Davide III, the former governor also of Cebu. Medyo ito mas dikit pa yung laban, no? He has over, again with 69.77 precincts reporting, you have over 548,789 votes for Junjun Davide. Trailing at close second din is Doc Tess Heirosa. Siya yung running mate ni Gwen Garcia with over 489,057 votes. Medyo dikit pa yung laban for Vice Governor. Again, 69.77% of precincts reporting. Meron ding third na John Enad of Promdi na party. Ito yung party na vehicle ni Senator Manny Pacquiao to run for president. Next, we look at Ilocos Norte. Another interesting race to check out. Of course, we had Lian Buwan reporting live from Lawag earlier. Ngayon naman, for Governor of Ilocos Norte, over 86% of precincts reporting as of May 9, 10:24 p.m. Unofficial partial results based on real-time data from the Comelec Transparency Server. Matthew Manotoc, the incumbent. Si Matthew Manotoc ay pamangkin ni Bongbong Marcos Jr., anak ni Senator Amy Marcos at pinsan ni Sandro Marcos. Has 227,321 votes, representing over 73% 73% of the 86% of precincts that have reported as of 10:24 p.m. Second is former Majority Leader Rudy Fariñas with just over 81,460 votes. That's just 26.38% of the precincts that have reported so far. Let's silipin natin yung vice gubernatorial race. Another Marcos, Cecilia Marcos, leading the race with over 232,000 votes, representing that would be 92.74% of the 86 precincts reporting as of 10:24 p.m. You have Michael Ramones, a very, very, very distant second, just over 6,000 votes. Medyo dumikit yung third, over 6,000 votes. And then the fourth at over 4,000 votes, si Joy Mintalan Butay, pero napakalayo siya sa current frontrunner na si Cecilia Marcos. We are looking at key, in case you're just joining us today, right now, nag-aabang ng resulta ng 2022 elections. We're taking a look at the local races and the transmissions to the Comelec Transparency Server as of 10:24 p.m. Now we look at La Union. We have over 88% of precincts reporting as of 10:24 p.m. Again, Rafi Ortega David, very distant first, no? 308,000 votes, trailed by Emmanuel Fonseca with just over 35,211 votes. For Vice Governor, La Union, unopposed. Siyempre, 100% siya ng 88% of precincts reporting. Another Ortega, Mario Eduardo Ortega, for Vice Governor.
Let's see Pampanga.
La Union. Can you pull up? First, well, let's look at Iloilo. One of the few provinces that has so far showed a pink, aka.
Yeah, but I don't think Jerry Tenes has any serious challengers.
Kaya din
Or I thought the defensor either. Parang,
Yeah.
But the Greens, I'm interested. No. A lot of them are unopposed also.
Yeah. Actually, no, parang that's also something that maybe not a lot of casual observers would realize na sometimes is it right to call it a privilege to endorse and support a national candidate? It also depends on your own situation in the local race. Kung unopposed ka, by all means, syempre, all out ka sa kandidato mo. I think one example of that also, there we have the partial unofficial results from Iloilo province. Let's take a look.
That's even more lopsided.
May ano naman pala.
May kalaban
naman pala si Governor Defensor, pero
he didn't even have to campaign. He was campaigning for Lenny across the Visayas.
Parang kumbaga yung resources niya at that point.
He was pouring it to Lenny.
We have over 3/4 of precincts reporting, 626,990 votes. Very, very distant. Second, you have 18,042 votes. Isang independent. Let's look at Vice Governor.
She's unopposed.
Unopposed siya si Tingting Garin.
I think they had a gentleman's agreement.
Okay.
Kaya hindi sila mag-aano ni Biron,
Yeah.
basta wag palalabanan si Tingting.
Yeah. And then the
Mga ganun sila dyan usapan sa Iloilo.
Yeah, and then the Garins and the Birons are both allies, no?
Yeah.
Of Bongbong Marcos Jr. Sila yung 2 of 3, tama ba? 2 of 3 districts in Iloilo na sumusuporta sa Uniteam tandem. In fact, sila yung nag-host nung tuwing kumakampanya ang Uniteam sa Iloilo province.
Okay, so 70%.
Okay, if you want to see for yourself yung results, let's read quickly lang. Let's just go to the first and the second in the presidential race and vice presidential race. We have 70.28% of precincts reporting as of 10:24 p.m. Bongbong Marcos with over 23 million votes. Leni Robredo, a very distant second with just 10.9 million votes. So far, Bongbong Marcos's votes represent 59% of the 70% of precincts reporting sa transparency server, while Leni Robredo's votes so far. That's 28.26% of the 70.28% sa transparency server. Quickly, vice presidential race, of course, Sara Duterte is still leading with 22.7 million votes from that's 60.25% of 70.28% of precincts reporting. Kiko Pangilinan at a very distant second with 6.8 million votes, 18.26%. Again, nabanggit na rin namin to kanina, no? Parang yung trend so far reflective of opinion polling. If you want to see these results yourself, you can visit ph.rappler.com. Again, that's ph.rappler.com. You'll be seeing, and you will see the unofficial partial results based on real-time data from the COMELEC transparency server. Meanwhile, we have Pia Ranada on the line reporting on Manila Mayor Isko Moreno. Pia?
Hi, Bea. Yeah, good evening.
Hi, Pia. Kamusta have we heard from Mayor Moreno?
Wala. Silent yung kanyang camp so far. We've been messaging him, Isko himself. We've been messaging his campaign manager and his chief of staff. So far, what we know is that he is with his family right now. He's spending the night with his family, and but I'm pretty sure that he already knows the numbers coming in, yung mga partial unofficial results. But so far, we have not heard any word of a press conference or concession speech yet, like any details about that. So we're all just waiting for any movement coming from his camp.
Pia, you've been covering, of course, the Manila Mayor for several months, even before he announced his candidacy, no? What was his mood heading into May 9? Given nga naman, napansin mo nga malamang, nabanggit mo nga malamang nakita niya naman niya yung unofficial partial results, no? Even though hindi pa kayo nag-uusap or hindi pa siya nagpaparamdam officially sa media. But what was his mood heading into May 9?
Malaban siya, I would say that like for example, yung meeting the advance niya, he was still very much parang a candidate who was fighting till the very end. And earlier this morning, when he entered his voting precinct, he was very upbeat. He was very puro smiles and charming pa rin as usual. Very much getting energy from yung crowd who greeted him when he arrived at his polling precinct. Talagang, of course, we know na marami namang voting precinct yun sa Manila, so yung mga botante doon, mga Manileños. So it was a very supportive crowd, and he seemed to be very happy about that. And when he talked to us media, no, sabi niya na he did his best, let God do the rest. So para sa kanya, he offered himself, he's an alternative candidate, he's someone who pitched himself as a choice of people who might not go for Marcos Jr. or Leni Robredo or the other candidates. So para sa kanya, he did what he could, and now it's all up to God. It's all up to fate to decide what will happen. He offered prayers before heading to his voting precinct, so we know that he's a very religious man, and he really started his day with prayers, and I'm pretty sure that on his mind now, yun, parang let the will of whatever fate awaits just happen, and we will see how gracefully he accepts whatever the results will be.
Yeah. Pia, the Manila Mayor, the outgoing Manila Mayor, did lay out a 10-year plan for the capital city of the Philippines, no? Has he discussed with you? Parang, so ano na ngayon? Because obviously, he gone for the presidency. He's not returning to Manila City Hall. Pero so what happens now to that 10-year plan of Isko Moreno?
His hope is that his endorsed mayoral bet, si Honey Lacuna, will be the one to continue his legacy. Anyway, she has been his vice mayor the term where he accomplished all of these things, yung kanyang infrastructure program. He had plans to parang create certain mga urban hubs, renewed urban hubs in Manila. He had more infrastructure to be built, more schools to finish. Certain housing projects are still not complete. So yun yung kanyang hope na if the next administration is friendly towards his legacy, diba? And of course, that would be someone who he endorsed. It would be Honey who would win. But of course, we are yet to see if that will be what will happen.
Yeah. Siyempre, interesting to kasi at the end of the day naman, diba? Like, I think in the meeting, the advances speech also of Isko Moreno, parang very clear naman yung gratitude niya towards Manila because, of course, he is what he is now. although he seems to, this presidential run is likely not to end successfully for him, but the very fact, diba, na he did poll very well in very early preference surveys, he does have a lot to thank Manila for. Thank you again, Pia Ranada. She's been covering Mayor Isko Moreno in his presidential campaign. We'll try to look at the specific islands where, based on the transparency server so far.
I just noticed, Bea, if we...
Can you scroll up a little bit?
Scroll up a little bit.
Yeah? Oh.
You know, if
the
we
green
add all from Lenny down,
Still not enough.
it's not enough to overcome
Yeah.
Mr. Marcos.
Can we hover over the green?
Was that the Lanao?
Oh, it's Lanao del
Lanao.
Sur. Naging green
Okay.
siya ulit. Nag-red na yan kanina eh. But ito partial. We don't know yet as of now kung ano na yung transmission rate ng Lanao del Sur. But we do know that the Lanao del Sur governor has endorsed Bongbong Marcos Jr. And again, napakataas ng preference rating ni Marcos Jr. dyan sa BARM. So,
May individual provinces na nagbabago-bago ng kulay, pero for the rest, it's pretty stable,
yeah,
right?
we're seeing the provinces, I think, that a lot of people expected to turn, or at least the major provinces and regions that where Marcos was dominant in, no? Kasi I know there was talk about like he slipped in Calabarzon, or he slipped in NC or whatever, but at the end of the day,
Even
kinda-
Pampanga, even Central Luzon.
yeah, he was still dominant in those regions. Obviously, the North Luzon is red for Bongbong Marcos. Ito nga yung solid North, kumbaga, na sinasabi nila.
Bicol region lang talaga ang
Yeah.
na iba. Pero the
Yeah.
rest of Luzon
Yung
is...
expected na what do you call this? Yung expected na provinces that would turn up for Leni Robredo, they turn up for her.
Yeah.
But I think naman, parang sabi nga ni Mara, di ba, very realistic naman yung campaign. Parang cautious optimism. Hindi naman sila bulag at parang, di ba, hindi naman sila detached from reality. And they acknowledge the accuracy and the science behind surveys.
Yeah.
Even though, the statements of the spokesperson, what they would say na.
Yeah. But looking at the map, talagang it really confirms yung strength yung North and South
Yeah.
unity.
Yeah?
Parang that's it. That's
Yeah.
how it looks like.
Ito na yung illustration, at least, but again, disclaimer, we have, it's a little more than half of transmissions na at this point. Nasa 60% na ata tayo, if I'm not mistaken. Ito na yung Tigrin, yung North and the South coming
Bea,
together.
it's probably time for you to discuss a little bit because people who may not know, example ko, ano tong pinapalabas dito pag pressing? Bakit wala pa raw dun sa canvassing ng provincial? We should, people get confused about
kasi,
the systems there.
So, di ba yung mga VCMs, magta-transmit yan automatically directly to the transparency server. So that's what we're seeing here. That's why we call it the partial and unofficial results. Yung official, darating pa yan in the coming weeks even.
Kasi uunahin muna from the city and towns, pupunta sa probinsya.
May
diba?
proseso yan.
Tapos ang probinsya, hindi naman pwedeng dumiretso sa Manila yung
Correct.
probinsya.
Pero ito rin yung feature of having automated elections. Ito yung transparency server. Habang dumadaan sa prosesong yon, the usual process of canvassing votes, meron ding transparency server na diretso binabato to the COMELEC. The data is being sent directly to the COMELEC transparency server. Meantime, continue to follow updates on Rappler's election microsite, ph.rappler.com. Again, that's ph.rappler.com. We now turn over to our community corner with Jules Giang and Pauline Macaraeg. Jules and Pauline?
Hello everyone and welcome back to Community Corner, where we talk about anything and everything about how communities work on the ground and online regarding this very crucial presidential elections. Good evening, I'm Jules Giang, Rappler's Head of Community, and together with me, of course.
Hi, I'm Pauline Macaraeg, Digital Forensics Researcher for Rappler.
Okay, so pumapasok na yung partial and unofficial results no after the precincts closed earlier at 7 p.m. And while the numbers are coming in, we're at around more than 70% already. Again, this is partial and unofficial pa lang to at the moment, but let's try to break this down no, yung discussion natin, especially with the leading candidate that we have right now. Your team, Pauline, has been very active in checking the teams of all campaign camps. No? Let's focus particularly with Bongbong Marcos, and particularly in the disinfo trends pre-election. Ano yung mga nasilip nyo dito so far?
Yes, so as early as October 2021, back when Bongbong Marcos filed his candidacy for presidency, his certificate of candidacy for presidency, we already saw a lot of disinformation trends on social media, particularly on Twitter.
Okay.
That was one of our earliest reports this year. It was about freshly created accounts who were trying to spam the platform using supportive hashtags for Marcos Jr. So we saw that this hashtag Laban Marcos trended back in October 2020. Trended in January, and when we checked the user creation dates of the accounts that tweeted about that, we saw na bago lang, as in kakagawa lang ng accounts nila noong October 2021.
So within that year only?
Yes. And then, just to make sure that we're not jumping into conclusions, right? We also compared those with a hashtag that was, against naman doon sa hashtag Laban Marcos, which was hashtag disqualify Marcos.
Okay.
And then we found out that the creation dates of the users who tweeted about that hashtag were more spread across the years, as early as 2009 pa.
So mas genuine ba yun?
Yes, yun yung naging conclusion namin. So that's one. Another one, in early January this year, we also found a Facebook group about Philippine history, which changed its name.
Pauline, quick break muna tayo. What we're seeing on our screen right now, we're going live in the Leni Robredo headquarters in Quezon City. Okay, so we're seeing Pauline, no? May gathering of people at the moment. That's in Katipunan, Quezon City. So despite the results of the partial and unofficial, so talagang people are gathering there. Kanina there were calls, no, Pauline, for volunteers para bantayan yung mga boto dahil nga maraming mga VCM ang hindi nag-work. So ngayon, it looks like it's a solidarity gathering of the supporters. And here we have Jairo.
Hi, magandang gabi sa lahat. Ako si Jairo Boliedo, Rappler reporter, and I've been covering and following the campaign of Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. And currently, we're now here at the Leni Kiko Volunteer Center in Katipunan Avenue in Quezon City to para kamustahin yung kanilang mga volunteers at yung mga supporters nila na nandito ngayon. As of the moment, it's close to 11 p.m. and the dictator's son, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, is still leading by a wide margin versus the opposition candidate, Vice President Leni Robredo. Itong volunteer center na ito ay naitayo ito during sa campaign ni Vice President Leni Robredo na ang very core ng kanyang campaign ay nandoon sa volunteerism. In fact, all of the grand rallies, all of the people's rallies all over the country na sinalihan ng hundreds of thousands of campaigns all around the country were volunteer-driven. Organized ito ng Robredo People's Council, and then eventually in-invite lang si Vice President Leni Robredo doon sa mga rallies na yon. So lahat yon, majority of those big campaign events are driven by these volunteers. So it's no surprising that a lot of people here showing up at this very crucial time for Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. This is a show of solidarity for the tandem, especially that they're currently behind front runners, the heirs or the descendants of the dictators, the descendants of dictator Marcos and the daughter of President Rodrigo Duterte, Sara Duterte. If you've been following the campaign of the Robredo and Pangilinan tandem, makikita nyo yung spirit of volunteerism. At tuloy-tuloy lang yon until this moment. Although meron lang bago sa mood ng kaunti kasi usually this place dito sa Katipunan used to be joyful and full of color, full of happy spirits. But until now, we can still feel that. It's just that there's something unexplainable na nararamdaman ng mga tao dito. And we can say collectively, they're not entirely hopeless, but there's something. You feel na meron silang nararamdaman na lungkot, meron siguro silang nararamdaman na disappointment. We talked to a volunteer earlier who is currently manning the entrance of the volunteer center. And sabi nila, parang they're still hoping for a miracle, not necessarily miracle, but they're still hoping for the best. Especially that hindi pa naman 100% yung voter turnout sa buong bansa. Although majority of the election returns have been transmitted, pero hindi pa naman. So nandun pa rin yung pag-asa sa kanila. Dito sa volunteer center, tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung volunteerism ng mga Leni and Kiko Pangilinan supporters. In fact, kung ano yung mga nakikita natin sa People's Rally ni Vice President Leni Robredo, yung pagpapamigay ng magkain, pagpapamigay ng free dinners, free snacks, free waters, nandito pa rin siya. Buhay na buhay pa rin yung tinatawag nilang kakamping spirit. And we are witnessing that right now. At my back na right now is nagaganap yung parang vigil and watch party ng mga kakampings. Ito ang ayon sa mga organizers na nakausap natin kanina, this event is dedicated to serve as a watch party for those kakampings or for those Leni and Pangilinan supporters who want to go here to witness yung voter turnout and at the same time for a vigil para magbigay ng solidarity at suporta para dun sa tandem. As of 10:50 p.m., patuloy pa rin yung pagdating ng mga tao dito. Bukas pa rin yung volunteer center for everyone who wants to go here. Tinanong natin yung organizers then until what time sila nandito. Wala naman daw, depende kung kailan matatapos yung event. Actually, just a few kilometers away here, doon sa headquarters naman nung frontrunner na si Dictator San Ferdinand Marcos, his supporters are celebrating and nagsasaya sila sa kalsada ng EDSA. Well, here, makikita natin yung solidarity at makikita pa rin naman yung hope sa mga tao na ito. At ito naman yung palagi sinasabi ni Vice President Leni Robredo sa kanyang mga supporters. Yun ang mga updates natin for the meantime dito sa Leni Kiko Volunteer Center, Katipunan, Quezon City. Pagpapatuloy po natin ang stream para mapanood po natin itong live updates dito sa kanilang vigil at election watch party. So tumutok lang po sa aming coverage and magkikita po tayo mamaya. For the meantime, I'm Jairo Boliedo and please continue watching our stream.
Alright, thank you so much, Jairo, reporting live from the Leni Robredo headquarters located in Katipunan, Quezon City. So, Pauline, we're seeing a solidarity program by some of the supporters of the presidential bet, VP Leni Robredo. Okay, so we were talking about Pauline, no, itong disinfo trends during the pre-election. So, let's proceed.
Alright. I was talking about earlier, nakita rin natin early in January this year, merong Facebook group that goes by the name Philippine History, which shed its name to BBM Sara at Philippine History. So, nagkaroon ng shift yung content nila, pati yung name actually, and then yung members na nag-disagree doon sa naging rebranding ng group, they were kicked out or told to leave.
So, this is a closed group or a private, public group?
I think it was, I have to double check.
Okay.
But,
Pero Base dun sa nakita nyo, parang mukha bang from the very start, that was the main intention? Or talagang nahamig
It
lang
was
sa'yo?
actually a Philippine history group. So,
Okay.
hindi siya slanted sa Marcos propaganda. Back then, what do you call this? Yung admin ng group na yun, sinasabi naman niya na pro-Marcos siya, but yung content mismo ng group, hindi siya totally pro-Marcos. So, mayroon pa ring diversity.
Okay.
But then, when they rebranded this particular group, nakita na naging malaki yung slant towards the Marcos propaganda, which we know and which Rappler has fact-checked several times before. So, marami ng mga false claims kaming nakita doon, kagaya ng Taliano Gold Myth,
Na paulit-ulit
na paulit-ulit natin nakikita, yung bar results ni former President Ferdinand Marcos, even COVID-19 disinformation, na napasok na rin sa group na yun.
Yes. Okay. Aside from the Taliano Gold, no, dito ba pumapasok yung myth nga ng Marcos Gold Online?
Yes,
Okay.
of course. We also did another story, I think it was last month lang. We traced kung saan ba nanggaling yung Taliano Gold Myth na to, kasi ang tagal na natin siyang nakikita, right? And parang ngayon lang siya nade-debunk.
So, sino ang salarin?
Ang salarin sa... Nung tinrace namin siya, so we looked at the public posts on Facebook, since sa Facebook naman siya talaga kumalat na nakita natin. We found that it originated from fringe groups.
Okay.
So ito yung mga Alpha Omega groups and so on, na talagang nagpo-push na merong Marcos Gold na mapapamigay sa mga tao once they win, or merong Marcos Gold in existence na hindi lang natin nakikita pa for now.
Magpapamigay ng gold ngayon.
Yun yung nakikita natin na matagal na nilang pinapahalat. But then, when we traced that myth, we found out that kahit na nanggaling siya sa fringe groups, kumalat siya doon sa mga loyalist groups na nagpa-amplify talaga ng ganitong klaseng narrative. So, pagdating dito sa loyalist groups, ito na yung mga legacy pages ni former President Marcos. Andyan na pumapasok yung mga supposed achievements niya na usually exaggerated. And some of those we also have fact-checked before na, for example, yung forex natin during the Marcos era, nasa 1:1 or 2:1, na hindi naman umabot sa ganun. We have a fact check on that. Pero yon, nasasama na siya sa ganung klaseng narrative. Kaya siya lumaki ng lumaki, and then na-amplify siya to other types of groups and pages. And then, ang maganda naman na nakita namin dito sa study na to, we found that fact checkers, not only media, but also yung mga sarili lang nila nagpa-fact check using primary sources, yun naman talaga yung kailangan natin to debunk posts, mas dumami when in October 2021, that's when again former Senator Marcos filed his COC for candidacy. So nakita natin na may pushback starting no October 2021, and then mas lumaki siya even up to this year.
Okay.
So yun yung medyo positive side.
Yung sa Twitter, there was a time, I'm not sure if last year, na parang biglang, wait lang, sino tong mga accounts na to nakakagawa lang, as you mentioned kanina. Tapos nun, Twitter had this action, no, to suspend or talagang totally take down about or more than 300 accounts. So, what was the what was the trigger of Twitter to do that?
Right. So we published our story back in January, and then I think that was about 3 days later, we received Twitter announced that they had actually taken down pala 300 accounts from the Marcos network. Many of those were mentioned in the report that we released.
Okay.
And they said they were found violating platform policies for manipulation and spam. So yun yung nangyari.
So dito natin masasabi no na yung stories that we're releasing has an impact doon mismo sa real world experience. Okay, so right now, speaking of impact, no, syempre may role yung press dito. So far in your analysis, in your research, ano yung nakita nyong crucial role ng press para ma-ensure na yung mga disinformation na to matuldukan?
Well, what we saw was a bit disappointing. Ang ginawa namin kasi we studied the types of attacks on the press last year. So that was 2021 yung naging scan period niya. And then we saw that in the second half of 2021, nag-spike yung mga attacks sa journalists. So, nakita namin doon nag-spike yung mga posts na merong words na bayaran, prostitute, which we saw na pinagsamang word ng press and prostitute. And then, yung paulit-ulit na pagkalat ng ganong klaseng narratives, kumalat siya talaga in the second half of 2021. You know, to paint the independent press as not credible. So parang may ganong klaseng behavior na nanggagaling sa tinignan namin actors kasi saan siya nanggagaling. And then we saw that they were mostly coming from pro-Marcos and pro-Duterte accounts. So nakita namin siya sa names ng pages, names ng groups.
Pero how does it go ba? Parang, of course, itong mga pages na to, these are amplifiers only.
They
diba?
could also be the sources.
They could also be the
Yes,
sources.
yes.
Pero meron bang pinaka-source of messaging yan na binababa lang?
Yes. Actually, yun nga. Yung keywords kasi na ginamit namin, yun nga yung bayaran. Usually, yung narrative din ng yellow media, madalas din na kinakabit dito sa mga independent press natin to paint that they are biased, na may kinikilingan, anti-government. Ganon yung klase ng narratives, which is, you know, if you know the role of the press, you know that the press is there to do checks and balances, right? Kaya ganun yung nagiging mga storya. And ayun, I think the false claims about the press, they undermine really the credibility of the media. And dumami siya talaga when nag-announce na tatakbo si Bongbong Marcos in October.
Okay, so pang-tulong ba yun sa pang-amplify?
I would say that it helped, you know, seeing kung ano yung nararanasan ng journalists natin on ground, right? Maraming reports na hindi pinapansin ng camps, maraming hindi nabibigyan ng chance to interview, and instead, napaprioritize yung mga hindi official journalists, right? So, parang doon siya nagkakaroon ng effect kasi parang nalilegitimize yung pag-atake sa press in essence. So, ayun.
Especially, mas tumaas ito nung nangyari yung denial ng
Yes,
franchise
because-
ABS-CBN.
Yes,
During
meron
that
na
time.
siya before. But then, nagsaspike talaga siya every time inaatake yung press na critical sa sinusupport ng mga accounts na yun. In this case, pro-Marcos and pro-Duterte supporters. Yung nakita natin na actors.
Speaking of in support to the Dutertes and the Marcoses, we have this another group which we call SMNI of Pastor Kibuloy. And in your research, ano ang finding nyo dito?
Okay, so we also took a look at SMNI because this was around the time when they got frequencies na they were assigned the frequencies that belonged before to ABS-CBN. So, tinignan namin kung paano sila nag-amplify ng content, ano yung mga content na ginagawa nila. And then we found out that on several occasions, SMNI News has been used as a platform to attack journalists and actually red tag government critics. So, yun yung madalas na narrative na nilalabas ng SMNI News. So, nung na-deny yung franchise ng ABS-CBN, Pastor Kibuloy himself made several threats. Ni-repeat nila yung sinasabi ni Duterte about, not giving the franchise to ABS-CBN. And then, there was also a time na kinumpare ni Pastor Kibuloy yung ABS-CBN to the Communist Party of the Philippines. So that's really, without backing it up, that's really
Pero it's
red
being
tagging.
supported by his supporters.
Yeah, of course. Kaya, ayun. And then we found out also na tumaas yung following nila in 2020 also. Doon sila talaga nagkaroon ng malaking reach.
So, prior to having a strong online presence, was this group strong on their TV or talagang they started online?
I think mas na-notice siya online.
Okay.
Because I think meron silang
Dahil mas accessible din naman.
oo. Meron silang TV shows, but marami sa circle ko na ngayon lang narinig yung SMNI. And then they knew about them through online.
Yeah. And in my quick research din, no, parang several appointed officials of government right now have shows in SMNI, like
right.
from NTF-ELCAC, among others, di ba?
Right.
And the supporters, the rabid supporters of the president, nandun sila. So, kumbaga parang it's a platform for them to, to say their piece kasi they can't do that directly on state network, which is PTV. So, siguro dahil private to, they're doing it here.
Aside from doing it on their own Facebook accounts.
Okay, so given this challenge, Pauline, no, saan na yung lugar ng news organizations ngayon?
Alright. Sadly, there's a Rappler study by the Rappler research team that found out that news organizations no longer dominate the Philippine online space. The findings of that study showed that during the pandemic, when Filipinos spent more time, di ba, on the internet, yung patuloy na pag-atake sa news organizations, nakabawa siya sa credibility, naka-affect siya talaga ng sa pagpapalabas na mababa yung credibility ng independent media. Naka-help siya talaga. And in fact, na-overtake na ng other information sources yung mainstream media organizations in terms of reach. So ito yung mga
Across all social?
Facebook mostly.
Facebook, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, alright, I have several questions pa, pero we'll have a very quick break. So we'll be watching a video about the Rappler microsite. Let's all watch this.
Ikaw ang bida. Sa darating na eleksyon, sa iyong boto nakasalalay ang iyong kalusugan, kabuhayan at kinabukasan. Maging handa. Kilatisin ang mga kandidato. Suriin ang kanilang track record. Timbangin ang kanilang mga pangako at paninindigan.
Thousands of you out there, volunteers, parallel groups, political leaders that have cast their lot with us because of their belief in our message of unity, because of their belief in the candidates sa Tambalang Marcos at saka Duterte. Kaya't napakalaking pasasalamat namin sa inyong lahat. Bukod pa doon ay magpapasalamat ako sa mga kababayan ko na nandiyan sila at nagsuporta sila hindi lamang sa mga kandidato, hindi lamang sa aming partido, kung hindi sa magandang bukas ng ating minamahal na Pilipinas. At yan sa akin ang pinakamahalaga na aking makukuha dito sa kampanya nito. Kaya ako yung papasalamat sa inyong lahat. Kagaya ng aking sinabi, ay hindi pa tapos ang bilangan. Marami nang nagsasabi na tapos na, pero hindi pa talaga. Kaya antayin natin hanggang talagang maliwanag 100% ang pagbilang. Hanggang tayo ay mag-celebrate o mag-isip na tapos na. Ngunit, kahit hindi pa tapos nga ang pagbibilang, hindi makapag-antay ang aking pasasalamat sa inyo lahat. Ang aking pasasalamat sa lahat ng tumulong, sa lahat ng sumapi, sa aming ipinaglaban, sa inyong sakripisyo, sa inyong trabaho, at sa binigay ninyo sa amin na oras, na kakayahan, ng sipag. Ang mga ganitong klaseng pagkagawa any endeavor as large as this does not involve one person. It involves very, very many people working in very, very many different ways. And to all of them, I thank you. And let us keep watch on the boat. Kung tayo'y palarin, ay aasahan ko na yung inyong tulong ay hindi magsawa. Ang inyong tiwala ay hindi magsawa. At dahil ay marami po tayong gagawin dito sa ating hinaharap. Maraming salamat sa inyo lahat. Congratulate na rin yung bagong senator. So, what is that case?
Alright, ayan po, natunghayan po natin no, ang unang speech ni Bongbong Marcos. It looks like yung tone niya dito very thankful sa kanyang mga supporters. And of course, yung mensahe niya rin dito, hindi pa rin talaga tapos ang bilangan. So, kahit na gusto nila mag-celebrate, kailangan pa nilang tapusin mismo yung official counting. But yan po, ang pinakaunang mensahe ni Bongbong Marcos dahil siya nga po ang kasalukuyang leading no, dito sa ating partial and unofficial count with ilang percent ba? 75.65% ng total election results processed as of May 9 at 11:10 p.m. Okay. Ayan. So, very interesting din yung discussion natin no kasi early last year lang your team has been very giving effort no to check kung ano yung iba't ibang mga nangyayari sa kanilang team. And then right now, with the biggest win, I guess, in history, well, hindi pa naman siya win, pero this big lead no, in any presidential election here in the Philippines, siguro later on, ito yung magandang silipin, Pauline, no? Paano nag-impact yung mga efforts sila on social media, on the ground, di ba? Paano nag-transcend yung mga efforts na yun? So, yun yung mga bagay na pwede nating silipin in the coming months. Okay, what are your thoughts so far? Okay, yan. So, we're still seeing, no, on the video right now, the supporters of the leading candidate for President, Bongbong Marcos. If I'm not mistaken, this is in their HQ in EDSA. So basically, tonight, Pauline, we're seeing two stories of two camps. Diba? Since 2016, itong laban nila for the VP race. And now for the next race, for the presidency, it looks like the victory will go to Marcos this time. Two stories tonight, one victorious and one still hopeful. No, what we're seeing in Katipunan right now. But we'll see, no? We'll try to wait then if we'll hear anytime soon from VP Leni Robredo. Okay, so seeing now, pinipirmahan niya ang mga shirts ng kanyang mga supporters. I guess ito yung mga part ng closest team niya. Okay. Ayan po. So, natutunghay lang natin. Muli po, a while ago, in case you missed it, Nagbigay po ng mensahe si Bongbong Marcos para sa kanyang mga taga-suporta dahil din sa malawak na lead para sa presidential race. We're also yet Pauline, to hear from the vice presidential race in katandem ni Bongbong Marcos, si outgoing City Mayor of Davao, Sara Duterte, with a very huge lead with 60%. Sara Duterte for the vice presidency. Okay. Ano so far, Pauline, yung mga nakikita mong parang track ng magiging next research nyo dito?
Well, marami na din kasing reports na nakita tayo. Marami na tayong nilabas about the Marcos Network. So, I'm really interested and curious to see kung paano pa siya mag-evolve. Kasi as we've seen so far, well-coordinated na yung network ng Marcos supporters on Facebook particularly.
Kumbaga parang na-master nila,
Yes.
no?
Yes. So, I'm really curious kung paano pa siya mag-evolve in the coming years.
Sino at papaano dapat maghabol? Para, alam mo yung kung nauna sila dito sa race ng disinformation, no? And to really get the support of other people. How can the other camps, paano sila hahabol?
For me, nasa platforms din.
Okay. What do you mean nasa platforms?
Nasa platform, for example, Facebook.
Okay.
Because even though meron tayong fact-checking program with them, nakita natin na nagpo-proliferate pa rin yung ganitong klaseng disinformation as we've seen in the numerous reports that we've released. And so, kung hindi siya talaga mapipigilan ng platforms, even though maghabol yung ibang candidates. Kasi we've seen the pro-Robredo network do that in this campaign. And then, actually, yung question nga natin dun sa nilabas nating study about it, kung nahabol ba ni VP Leni Robredo ng camp niya, yung ganitong klaseng network na Marcos supporters.
Baka kinaya pa.
And as we're seeing right now, mukhang lahirapan talaga kasi sobrang laki na talaga ng Marcos Network.
Okay, so at the moment pala, Paulino, what we're seeing on the top of your screens, yan po, Lenny supporters, okay? Ang nasa baba at nasa taas itong si Bongbong Marcos na nasa loob ng kanyang HQ sa may Mandaluyong, sa may EDSA dito sa Metro Manila. At ang natutunghay naman nating mga supporters ni Leni Robredo ay nasa Naga naman sa may Camsur. So once again, as mentioned, Pauline, ito yung dalawang storya ng dalawang kampo na talagang madikit yung laban simula noong 2016. But right now, naging wide yung gap. And that's a very interesting point that we need to think about. Lalo na with the recent campaign amidst all of the massive groundswell rallies, 'di ba? Parang hindi siya nag-translate. Well, nag-translate siguro with the votes that we're seeing with Leni Robredo, pero baka yun na yun. So of course, hindi pa sapat yung mga words na pwede nating mabigay ngayon, pero let's see siguro with the other research that we can do in the future. But yeah, very interesting night. What are your takeaways so far, Pauline, for this very long day?
Well, marami talagang pwede mangyari. And I think, I think maraming available resources out there, but in the end, nasa sa atin pa rin kung paano natin sila gagamitin and paano natin sila i-share sa ating circle. Okay.
All right, so to all of our audience, this brings to a close our Election Day coverage for #WeDecide Atin ang Pilipinas. Join us tomorrow as we continue our coverage for the 2022 elections.
You can view the total election results on Rappler's election page, ph.rappler.com.
On behalf of Bea Cupin, JC Punong Bayan, Sofia Toma Cruz, John Neri, Marites Vito, Jail Cornelio, and our guest panelists.
On behalf of reporters Lian Buan, Mara Cepeda, Pia Ranada, Aika Ray, Rambo Talabong, and Jairo Boledo,
I'm Jules Giang.
and Pauline Macaraeg, for the 2022 elections, Rappler chose #WeDecide, Atin ang Pilipinas.
The rallying cry to reclaim this country does not end with an election. Instead, it restarts with us.
We will take back our regard for life, our respect for others' rights, our compassion for our neighbors, our dignity as workers, our capability to give our families a decent life.
We will exact accountabilities as taxpayers. We will shed the parochial mindset to protect the country's collective good.
We will, before the world, assert our sovereignty as a nation.
#WeDecide, Atin ang Pilipinas. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Kasama ni Leonie de Guzman. Tutuloy natin ang laban. Magandang simula ito. Number 2 sa balota.
Pilipinas! God first!
Bang! Action!
Mali Bakyan!